You guys can, you can still, we're not quite ready. You can still talk. Sorry, guys. You didn't, give me just a couple more minutes. Okay, I think we're ready. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today is April 5th. You're at the Board of Supervisors meeting. Sorry we're getting started a little bit late. If everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for our invocation from Deacon Jose Reyes from St. Stanislaus Catholic Church. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Almighty and eternal God, you have revealed your glory to all nations. God of power and might, wisdom and justice, through you, authority is rightly administered, laws are enacted, and judgment is decreed. We pray for our governor of this great state of California, for the members of the legislature, for judges, elected civil officials, especially those members of the Stanislaus County Board of Supervisors, and all others who are entrusted to guard our political welfare. May they be enabled by your powerful protection to discharge their duties with honesty and ability. We likewise commend to you, to your unbounded mercy, all citizens of the United States, that we may be blessed in the knowledge and sanctified in the observance of your holy law. May we be preserved in union and that peace which the world cannot give. And after enjoying the blessings of this life, be admitted to those which are eternal. We pray to you, who are Lord and God, forever and ever. Amen. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Deacon. That was great. Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to move on to our presentation. It is Library Week in Stanislaus County. And Sarah? Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you. Susan's going to be driving, so are we not? Okay. There we go. Okay, great. Good morning, Chairman Withrow, Supervisors, CEO Hayes, and Council Bowes. I am so pleased to be here today to share some of the wonderful things the library has been doing over the past year. The mission, next slide. The mission of the Stanislaus County Library is to engage the community, offering access to information, knowledge, and the tools for innovation and personal development. In short, we invite everyone in Stanislaus County to create, learn, and discover with us. While I don't have library patrons here with me to speak to you today, you will see their comments throughout today's presentation. These comments are pulled from our 2021 Customer Satisfaction Survey, which I'll touch on in some detail a little bit later. We'll open with this commenter who said, "Public libraries are the foundation of democracy. It starts with people who see themselves as a member of all mankind and courses through the collection that delivers facts on all issues." That's a profound vision of the library and one to which we certainly aspire. I do hope we live up to that. We'll start with a fiscal snapshot. In this case, this is the close of fiscal year 2021. On the left, you can see our revenue. The lion's share of that, $13.9 million, is actually measured as tax funds. As you know, we're funded primarily through a dedicated 1/8 cent sales tax approved by the Stanislaus County voters, and we are grateful for their continued support. We couldn't do this without them. That's followed by state and federal funding, general fund contributions, public facility fees, and other sources which include donations, book sales, and fines and fees. On the next chart, you'll see our expenses. As with most organizations, the majority of our costs are associated with salaries and benefits. Next, we have general operating expenses, books and materials, and then finally capital project spending. Sales taxes did come in higher than expected in fiscal year 2021, so you can see we did carry over a significant balance remaining at the end of the year. We are using those unexpected one-time funds to address some really critical needs that we have related to physical infrastructure of our facilities, but also technological infrastructure maintenance. We'll also be using those funds as investments in future operations. So, what did we do with all of that money? We circulated a lot of materials. During fiscal year 2021, we did provide curbside service for approximately 8 months, or 2/3 of the year. Over the course of the full year, we circulated about 478,000 physical items and about 244,000 virtual items. Because not everybody could come to the library, our staff made nearly 600 deliveries of materials to patrons' homes and also to care facilities. We also distributed over 9,000 books for children and youth to keep, both from our libraries and from community partner sites, including school lunch distributions and similar programs that were happening in conjunction with various pandemic responses. COVID did require a shift from in-library programming to take-home and virtual options, and we invested significant resources creating tools to support parents as their children's first and best teachers of their preschool-aged children. Many of these projects were supported by grants from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the California State Library, and local support organizations, including the Library Foundation and our various friends groups. Read to Me kits, there on the left, are designed for preschoolers and include a selection of books, a music CD, and a puppet or other age-appropriate toy, and these enable parents to bring the library's storytime experience home. These have proven extremely popular, and we've actually built on their success by expanding our offerings to include kits intended for emerging readers in the early grades to continue to support that literacy development through the ages. Also popular were our grab-and-go STEAM kits. These are small activity kits consisting of a simple science, technology, engineering, art, or math activity. I will say I double-checked that 12,000 distributed number many times with staff, and it is true. We created and distributed by hand 12,000 STEAM kits, which was pretty impressive. During school closures, we did hear from many parents who appreciated having something easy and educational to do with their children while they were learning at home. We also provided programs virtually. While most programs were designed for children, we did host virtual trivia nights, art classes, and book clubs for teens and adults. We did discover through our virtual programming that we were able to attract an audience who weren't necessarily library users, as well as people for whom library programming hadn't been convenient previously, either because of hours or locations, and those people were able to access library programming from their homes, many for the first time. And of course, we did open the Empire Library and completed work on the Turlock Library. These two facilities really are a testament to the commitment of the county and the community to our public library system, and they provide really an exemplary example of what is possible in Stanislaus County. So that's what we did last year, but what kind of difference did we make? To find out, we asked our users. In September of last year, we launched the first of what will be an annual customer satisfaction survey, and all of the comments that you've seen throughout this presentation are pulled from this year's responses. I'm gratified to see that despite our many challenges over the past few years, our users are definitely satisfied with our performance. As you can see, 89% of respondents reported that they were satisfied or very satisfied, with well over half saying that they were very satisfied with the services that we're providing. When we asked about satisfaction with particular services, and this isn't all of them, this is just the top two and the bottom two, you can see that the highest level of satisfaction were with our staff, which is no surprise if you've worked here, but it's still great to see that our customers recognize that. Respondents also expressed a high level of satisfaction with our physical collection and our materials offerings more generally. While our users as a whole didn't indicate that they were actively dissatisfied with any of our services, the two lowest levels of satisfaction were associated with our computers and printers that are available in our libraries and with our hours of operations. I will say that we have directed and are continuing to direct significant resources towards the issues with our public computers, and I am confident that we will have that solved soon. We are also working towards a sustainable financial strategy that will allow us to expand hours. As I mentioned, our public reported very high levels of satisfaction with the performance of our staff. As mentioned, this is National Library Week and Library Week here in Stanislaus County, and in fact today is National Library Workers Day, so I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the nearly 175 people who make all of this possible. I've been working in libraries for more than 20 years, and this is honestly the best team I've ever had the privilege of working with. While most of our staff are busy getting ready to open our libraries today, we do have members of the library's leadership team here today. Nothing happens in the library without their efforts and the efforts of the staff that they're here representing. So I couldn't let today go without taking a moment to thank all of them. In addition to the satisfaction and other similar rating questions, we did ask a number of open-ended questions to capture the impact of library services on the lives of our users. We then analyzed those answers to see where we found the largest impact. So, for example, when we asked what people valued most about the library, the most common answers referred to our collections, our staff, and our services for youth. We heard wonderfully specific examples. For example, this one, the library helps me teach my kids the importance of reading, set a good example, and save tons of money. We also asked how the library benefits families. And again, we most commonly heard about access to the collection, services for youth, and the fact that these services and materials are available for no charge. This patron noted that she uses the library to save for her required reading for school, and I should note she is a college student, for our streaming content, and to provide a getaway space from her mom. So if you've ever been an adult child living with your parents or parented an adult child, I think that's definitely, I'm glad we're able to offer that family that service. So where do we go next? Over the next years, we're going to continue to build on the learning of the last 2 years. I think the pandemic was challenging in many ways, but particularly in the areas of virtual services enabled us to stretch in a way to see some possibilities that we weren't necessarily focused on previously. We're going to take some of that one-time money and invest it in strengthening our infrastructure. I mentioned some of our technological challenges, but also we have a lot of deferred maintenance issues that need addressing, and this will enable us to start doing some of that. And really setting us up for the future of the library. And finally, we want to take some time to increase public awareness of what the library has to offer. So often, as we saw in this meeting last week, after somebody does a presentation about the library, people mention that they're surprised at everything the library has to offer. So me being here today is the first of what I hope to be many opportunities for me to share everything that we're doing and all the things that we want to do in the future. So thank you very much for the opportunity to do that today. And with that, are there any questions?
Sarah, thank you. Okay, Manny?
Thank you so much for the presentation, Sarah. So you stole a little bit of my thunder because you were going to say how many things that the library has to offer one may see. So I got the opportunity last Wednesday to come and tour the library with Denise Nordell, who's part of the Friends of the Library's Foundation, and met many of your staff, and I was totally amazed by the amount of services that the library provides. The new books, the book exchange. I even got to go underground where all the action happens and books get transferred across the country. They even have a database that's in place, so if you live in another state or city and you want a book from Modesto, California, or anywhere in the county library system, you can request and they mail it out, and vice versa. So all of the technology, I even got to meet my 7th grade computer teacher, Miss D'Ambrosio.
That's great.
So that was very nostalgic, but again, I can't say it enough. I was pleasantly surprised the services that it provides. Although I was a little discouraged when they didn't let me go into reading time, but maybe next time. Thank you so much for the presentation, and I would really implore all of you, if you have the opportunity with your kids or even yourself, just go and visit the library. I think it's a huge asset for all of us here in Modesto and for all the libraries throughout the county's library system.
Yeah, I will say most people do interact with us when they have children, with their children. We have enormous numbers of services for adults, from job search assistance to test-taking assistance. There's a lot. So we really do encourage folks to come over, even when you don't have children, to bring with you.
There was even a part, I was just looking it up, the Veterans Connect, the library, so veteran services, people that want help and assistance that are veterans, the library even plays a role in that. And then passport services.
Yes.
You guys also do passport
We do.
services, which prior to you guys going to appointments only, you were servicing about 200 people a day.
Yeah, which was a little unsustainable, to be frank.
But now through appointments, you can go through the passport service, which you can obviously do at the recorder's office, but I thought it'd be more enjoyable to get your passport done and read a novel while you're waiting for the application.
There you go.
So thank you.
Thanks, Manny. You know, it seems like so many times, Manny, you run across teachers all over the place. I know. And I'm thinking, you must have been in school more than 12. Must have been multiple.
I was in detention a lot, so I got to know a lot of them.
Couldn't have just been 12 years because you had so many of these teachers. So anyway, that's great, great. So anyway, Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think, anybody else want to?
Cheers. Thank you to all your staff.
Thank you. And I know we're going to come up here and give you a certificate, but before we do that, I think we wanted to have a comment from Pat Portwood and Susan Thomas, if they wanted to come up and
Well, good morning,
morning.
Chairman Woodrow and Board of Supervisors. How surprising that I would be here. My name is Pat Portwood, and I'm here along with Susan Thomas, who is our board president, representing the Stanislaus Library Foundation. Well, it's fitting that during National Library Week, we are here to celebrate 2 updated libraries. We're going to take Sarah's report and go deep into the 2 libraries, and you might be surprised which one I might be talking about. But anyway, these were 2 libraries added during the 2021 year, and we are so proud. One is Empire, and the other is Turlock. In August of 2021, most of you were there for this wonderful reopening of our Turlock Library. What an accomplishment. It was a long, long journey that spanned quite a few years, as most of you know. But thank you to the board for approving funding of this beautiful building and involving our Turlock community. I can't say enough about how much it meant to have our needs listened to. Several vision meetings, Patty Hill Thomas, everybody around, and the end result was we now have a community room that never existed, able to seat over 100 folks. We have an outdoor patio, as well as Friends of the Library bookstore. We have a makerspace, a teen room. We never had an identified teen room, and a larger children's library. Now, I could go on, but I know we have a public input time, so I will behave because there's so many things to celebrate about this library. If you have not been there, I encourage you. It is absolutely amazing. And so Susan's going to share a little bit about the Empire Library. But I just want to say, as we celebrate these updated libraries, it's our wish from the foundation to continue to strive for such beautiful facilities in every part of our county. And that's the mission we're on next. So thank you both all for being library champions, and you get to meet Susan Thomas. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pat. Susan, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Withrow and supervisors. As Pat said, I'm Susan Thomas. I'm president of the Stanislaus Library Foundation. We support library programs through fundraising and advocacy. So as she said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the wonderful new library in Empire that opened almost a year ago. With areas dedicated to children, youth, adults, and community, it nearly doubled the space of the old library. The fact that the land was donated by the Empire Community Hall Association really indicates how important it is to that city. A new, modern, and safe library had been a dream for a long time. Many of you attended and spoke at the dedication ceremony and heard from community members about the cooperative efforts that went toward the project and the benefits it would bring to the community. As supervisors, I hope you all feel a great sense of pride at what was accomplished. It's so important to remember, especially during National Library Week, that libraries are not just nice places where you can get free books, but they can act as an anchor in the community, providing a host of services that aren't otherwise available. The Empire and Turlock libraries are outstanding examples of this. All our libraries in Stanislaus County have been doing an exemplary job of providing these services in the face of the pandemic. You've heard about some of those services, but it's not just about a long list. It's about the people, the community members whose lives are enhanced by those programs. Libraries represent the best of what our communities are and can be, supporting and connecting one another. We're so proud of how our Stanislaus County libraries are doing that, with the Empire Library and the Turlock Library as shining examples. Thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting our libraries.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, I'm going to come down there, I think.
I'll just add really quickly. I went to the Turlock Library a couple of weeks ago, and in the community room, the new community room, there was a group of folks doing free tax for, I can't remember the categories, but it was seniors for sure. But we're utilizing that community room, again, to help the community, and that is just a shining example of what we can do in our libraries now that we have some extra space. So, thank you.
Okay, maybe if Sarah can come up, and maybe Susan and Pat, if you guys want to come up too, and we'll do some pictures here. We just have the resolution here from the Board of Supervisors, and I'm not going to go through and read all this, but as you guys have said, how important our libraries are to our community, and we always say, at least I always say, that education is a great equalizer. And it's what's so great about this country, that anybody can be anything, and they all have the opportunity to get there, but the libraries are a critical portion of that. Just the knowledge is very powerful. And so, especially during the pandemic, as we had all the things going on with our schools and stuff, and just to still have our libraries and people be able to access them it was just critical. So anyway, we thank you guys, and we celebrate Library Week here, and let's take some pictures here. If you want to hold that up.
Okay, sure.
Okay, and you can scoot over here and let's stand right here. you guys very much. Sarah, thanks for all you do. Yeah. Susan, thank you very much for everything. And Pat, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's move on now to our public comment period. And this is a period where anyone can talk about anything that's not on the agenda specifically. We have 5 minutes for that, or longer if you need that. And we also have some written comments here that we've received. We don't read those publicly, but we have received some written comments during public comment. Okay, so I'm going to start off with, and I've got speaker cards here. And if you didn't turn in a speaker card, you can still come up after we go through the speaker cards. Okay, we're going to start off with Jim Bishop. Jim, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Chairman.
Good to see you.
Unfortunately, today I have to come to complaint. So, starting for the past 3 days, our neighborhood's been interrupted by constant overflights of airplanes and helicopters. Sunday from 3:30 p.m. to 12:30 in the morning on Monday. A helicopter from 5:40 p.m. to 9:35 p.m. Monday. A Cessna from, 07:50 this morning until the time I left. And Saturday from 5 to 8 p.m. and then 10:25 p.m. to 11 p.m. Maybe more, I don't know. But this is a lot of constant airplane and helicopter traffic. And in researching it, I found that most of this, in fact, all of the ones I've mentioned, come from the sheriff's office. And I have nothing against law enforcement, but my concern is that this is disturbing and makes me feel like I'm living in a prison camp. I feel it's inappropriate. There should be better ways. If they need surveillance, there should be better ways to do it. Also, of course, as I've mentioned before, small airplanes emit lead because they use leaded fuel that's around 8 grams an hour for a small plane like a Cessna. And the helicopter costs about $600 an hour to operate, according to the report by the Modesto Bee. So, I'm not happy today. Sorry to say that. And really, that's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you coming down. Okay, next up I have Martha Villasenor. Martha, good morning. How are you?
Nervous.
Don't be nervous.
My name is Marta Villasenor, and this is my first time that I'm going to be presenting on MAC, and I'm going to present the parkland. I've been living there for many years, and I know what's going on, and I know what they need. So I hope that I'll do my best to help everybody there. And today is the day that we're going to have a meeting at 6 o'clock, and I hope everybody can go they can support us.
So you said you're on the MAC. Is that what you said Very good. And just recently got on it? Is that what you're saying, Martha?
This is my first time.
Well, that's great. Well, first, we thank you very much for getting involved and being a part of it, and I'm sure you'll make a difference. And that's what we need, is people to get involved. And
Yes.
as you can see, we have people here, and it does make a difference to show up in front of especially elected officials and let them know what's going on and your thoughts. So we very much appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Martha. Okay, Miguel, we're not going to let you get away.
Sorry, sir. I was looking for the immigration.
How are you this morning?
Very good, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, come here to make some kind of complaints in regard to I'm a member of the Continuum Care Board of Directors, and we lost the director or the coordinator of the Division of Housing and Homeless Division, Mrs. Bailey. She resigned the 24th, and then we received information that the ex-director of the CSA resigned too, and her last day going to be the 15th April. As a member of that board, we are part of the signatures in regard to the collaboration application to HUD and the HMAS. And yet from the CO office, we never received no notification, no information, what is the status and what we're supposed to do. As a board director, we're supposed to approve or disapprove funding for HUD, for homeless, and different programs. And yet we never received no notification in what we're supposed to do as a board. So we don't have right now the CSA is supposed to be the signature for the collaboration application to HUD, and we don't have the directors for the division. They're supposed to help us run the funds and the programs. At the same time, we need some answer, Mr. Chairman, and we not receive nothing. My understanding is the chairman of the board sent a letter for the lady of the CSA to have some answer, and she not answer. I'm assuming this is another person in at the position of director of CSA, and he still not contact the groups. So I'm worried what going to do, because tomorrow we're supposed to have the executive committee, the AMPAR, we're supposed to have prepare the agenda, and we don't have nothing in there in the agenda. So we are very concerned, Mr. Chairman, because we're talking about federal funding and responsibility from the state, what we're supposed to do. So I hope that somebody have an answer for that. Thank you, sir.
We do, Miguel. If Jody wants to.
Hi, Miguel. Like everything else, when someone leaves county service, we have someone else step into their role, and it usually does take a few days for us to reassign duties and so forth. I encourage you to maybe stop at the back table. You can chat with Ms. Tina Roach there in the back. She can provide you the latest information on who's been reassigned to what roles. If you have any specific questions about the agenda that's upcoming, we can try to answer those for you as well. Thank you.
No, I'm talking about you, sir. You are the CEO. And I'm talking about your responsibility to send us, because Mr. Rocha is under you, but the person that hired the CSA director is Mr. Hayes. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Miguel. Okay. Okay, next up, we have Eileen Martino. Eileen, good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, thank you.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Eileen Martino, and I work for Moss Energy Works. And I have provided you guys with these presentations here at the Stanislaus County Farm Bureau. So yesterday I was fortunate enough to give a presentation on our projects to the Ag Advisory Board here in Stanislaus County. Which went fantastic. And today I want to give a little bit more of a condensed version, but I still want to provide you guys with the full presentation if you ever want to review it. So here I'm just going to talk a little bit about the projects that we're applying for here in Stanislaus County for dairy digester projects, and then just answer a few questions that you may have regarding it. And basically the reason we're doing this is we are applying for CDFA grants under the Dairy Digester Research and Development Program for 4 dairies here in Stanislaus County. And so part of that is community engagement and getting feedback from you as the board, but also from here, members of the community as well. So we wanted to reach as many people as we possibly could. So I'm mainly going to focus on what is a manure digester, who is Moss Energy Works, what is Moss Energy Works proposing to build, and what are the potential impacts of the proposed projects. So Moss Energy Works builds covered lagoon digesters. So we typically try to take existing lagoons on dairy facilities and cover those with a thick tarp and capture the manure methane gas that is coming off of the digester and capturing it, and as well as we're capturing the odor, but mainly we're capturing that methane gas and converting it into renewable natural gas that can fuel CNG vehicles. So there's different styles, but that's the style that we use. Typically, again, we try to use existing pond, but occasionally we have to build a new pond out, which we go through the permitting process to do so. Our big thing, our big push is that we're not trying to inhibit a dairyman's operations, we're trying to enhance it. And so obviously a big thing about a dairy is it has a very strict cycle. It goes from the cows to the manure goes to the lagoon manure gets spread out onto the fields, and then it helps those crops grow, and then the cows eat the crops, right? So we insert ourselves into, after the manure gets flushed through the dairy, it goes into a digester, and again, we are capturing that methane gas rather than it sitting out and letting it go into the atmosphere. And then sometimes it goes into a lagoon, but other times dairymen try to flush the manure water or irrigate straight out of the field, which is again reducing even more emissions. So to compare how effective this is, I like to use the thing that every dairy cow contributing to a digester is taking one car off the road in terms of carbon emissions, as well as the fuel supply of a 3,000 wet cow equivalent dairy, which is one milking Holstein cow on a freestall barn, and then every other support stock is a fraction of that, can fuel 34 trucks a year. So I have some projects that we've done. These would be some of our first projects here in Stanislaus. We were fortunate enough to receive grant funding for Alum Farms Vista here in Stanislaus County, last round of grants, and they're in the end stages of design right now. And then we have additional projects in Tulare County, Kings County, Fresno County, and Merced County. So those are some pictures of projects that I've attached there. Moss Energy Works, again, we're a dairy digester developer. Our home base is in Reading, but majority of our staff now falls here in this area because obviously most of the projects are here in this area. One of the big things is that we give an opportunity for the dairymen to own their projects, but a lot of times we end up owning the project, which means not a cent out of pocket for the dairymen. We cover everything, we apply for the grants. Even if they choose to own, we apply for the grants, we take care of operations, we take care of every step of the way because the dairyman has enough to deal with already. So we have 42 projects here in California, 100% of those still operational today. And then we've also gone in with a lot of digesters, existing digesters, and retrofitted them and helped them get back into operations because there's a lot of older digesters that are out of business now. We are intending to apply for Cuckoo Creek Dairy in Turlock, River Rock Dairy in Hilmar, as well as Merino West Dairy and Val Martin Dairy as well. So the process is we, again, will, if we have to build a new dirt pond, we will, but a lot of times we'll try to use an existing pond that's already grandfathered in, which again helps with the budget of the project. Then typically we'll line those projects. Unless it's already a grandfathered pond, then not always will the water board require us to, but if they do, we will. And then we cover that lagoon, and again, we fill it, make sure there's no leaks. We have to be extremely vigorous with our permitting, and so we try to go along with what the county, what the air board, what the water board requires of us. Project impact, these projects normally range from $4 to $8 million. Oop, I'm running out of time.
Go ahead and wrap it up. That's
okay,
good,
thank you. But we look to do a lot of, all projects contractors will have a minimum local hiring requirement, so we try to work with as many local contractors as we possibly can, especially if the dairyman has a preference. Positive impacts, local job creation, local spending, expand tax base, support to agriculture, greenhouse gas reductions, odor control, protect water quality, water savings, emission reductions, and converted fleets. Any negative impacts could be increased noise from construction, increased traffic during construction. These dairies are mostly remote, so a lot of the community members won't see that, but we work with the dairymen closely, especially as they're normally local residents to their dairy. And then we'll go through any of the mitigation efforts as well to make sure that we're doing everything properly. The last request that I have of you guys and as the community, part of our grant process to make these grants more competitive, to get these grants for these local dairymen, is letters of support. So we ask that if anybody is interested in letters of support to reach out to us. We'll be here for the remainder of public comment, and then I'll go outside. If anybody wants to reach out to us, we'll be happy to talk with you.
Okay, Eileen,
Thanks.
thank you very much.
Sorry, that was a really
No,
short version. Thank
did
you guys so
great.
much for your
Perfect.
time.
Thank you. Okay, and the last speaker card I have is Joni Grebe. Thank you. Good morning, Joni. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you. Okay, so I want to bring your attention to something, and it is the recent actions of Dr. V. As our public health officer, she's tasked with maintaining and improving the health and well-being of all Stanislaus County residents. Public health succeeds when the span of healthy life and the quality of life are increased. Unfortunately, the actions of our public health for the last 2 years and many of the recommendations they have put forth have caused so much harm. I won't stop reminding this board that our public health COVID measures have had a direct impact on the mental health of our children, as evidenced by the declaration of national emergency in child and adolescent mental health by the AAP and AACAP, and I know I've told you guys about that before. I would also like to remind you that you followed the guidance of the health department that let strip clubs and casinos reopen before our schools. You followed the guidance of a health department that let beaches be closed and supported canceling fireworks shows in the middle of summer. In fact, my own local neighborhood park had 2x4s drilled over the basketball hoop to keep kids from using the park all summer long. Those were orders from our public health department. Their orders. For 2 years, I watched my school district follow the state guidance and the extreme policies that our public health provided to them instead of putting our children, their needs, and their well-being first. It should be obvious to us all by now that those policies continually to put our children last. Let me say this again. The science has never changed regarding our kids. Our children who have had a mortality rate of 0.0007% from COVID. They have always had the least risk for severe outcomes. They have always had a 0 statistical risk of death. They have always had a disconnect between cases and hospitalization rates. Under the direct guidance provided by our own public health, our school districts forced healthy children into quarantines because they might get sick, missing 10 or more consecutive days of school, sometimes over and over. How many of those students forced into exposure quarantines ever got sick? Under the direct guidance of our public health, we covered the faces of children learning phonics, struggling with speech delays, and inhibiting crucial stages of growth and development. I have never once witnessed Dr. V advocate to help our children through these insane 2 years. For over an entire year, public health did nothing to help my older children get back into the classroom, and when they returned to the classroom, under public health guidance, they returned like animals, sitting in a plastic cage, muzzled and afraid. I wish that was an exaggeration. I have been continuously appalled at the lack of common sense leadership and basic ability of our public health to accurately and transparently bring forth the data and the truth about COVID and our children. It is my personal opinion that you shouldn't be allowed to inflict 2 years of direct harm on our children and remain in your position. Again, not once has Dr. V publicly advocated for our children during these last 2 years, but what is she apparently advocating for right now? SB 1464. Her name is on this letter to support that bill. She has every right to personally and professionally support or oppose any piece of legislation. Absolutely. But the support of SB 1464, the disdain and the retaliation this bill throws in the face of our own sheriff and his department goes too far. This bill would, and I quote, prohibit state funds from being provided to any law enforcement agency that publicly announces they oppose or adopts a policy to oppose a public health order. The bill would, if funds are withheld, require those funds to instead be reallocated to the county public health department. Follow the money. Because of this, I'm asking you to look closely at SB 1464. I'll give you the full text of the bill to look over. Consider the ramifications it will have in our county. I would encourage each of you to oppose this bill and have some conversations with Dr. V about it. It's time to bring our community back together, to heal, and to stop these divisive, extreme bills that will only hurt our community and continue to hurt our kids. I would have been arrested like 100 times. I would have been fined like 100 times if public health orders had been enforced by our sheriff the last year. And I've only gotten like one speeding ticket in my entire life. So this is crazy, you guys. So I'm going to leave these for you.
Okay, thank you, Joni.
I do want to provide just a quick comment for anyone in the public who's here today or watching our broadcast. It was brought to my attention that there was a letter provided from the Health Officers Association of California in support of SB 1464. Our public health officer, Dr. Julie Waishampine, is a member of this. However, there's no clarity about whether she did or did not support the vote that took place in here. Dr. V is on a very well-earned vacation this week. When she returns, I'll be meeting with her and the sheriff to discuss this bill. I will also add that through the last several years of working with her on numerous issues with this respect, I can tell you she has opposed many of these legislative efforts in the past, but that doesn't mean that one person's opposition changes what an entire group does. So I just want to put that on the record, and I'd be glad to follow up at a future board meeting to clarify exactly what role, if any, she participated in this. Thank you.
Okay. All right, very good. Thanks, Joni. Okay, that's all the speaker cards that I have. Is there anybody, I've got speaker cards for other specific items on the agenda, in particular consent, but anybody else want to talk about anything else before we move on to the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to the consent calendar. I know we've got requests to speak on item 5B8, and so we will let's go ahead and look for a motion to just deal with everything else on the consent calendar, and then we will pull, except for 5B8, and then we will pull that one for public comments.
Motion to approve all consent items other than item 5B.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Pass unanimously. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so 5B8, I'm going to open up the public comment. Just oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead. We'll let Jody's going to speak to this just for a second, and then we'll go through the public comment cards. Jody, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chairman Withrow, members of the board, and everyone here joining us this morning. Just a couple of quick comments on this item before we hear public comment on this. I do just want to provide a very quick bill summary so everybody's familiar with what is under consideration today. SB 871 is a bill that would prohibit schools from admitting any person as a pupil to any private or public elementary or secondary school, child care center, day nursery, nursery school, family daycare home, or development center unless prior to their admission to that institution they've been fully immunized against COVID-19. In particular, existing law does provide exemptions for medical or personal beliefs. This bill would prohibit that provision of exemption, which I would add was a central component of the governor's vaccination plan when he did introduce the concept for school-based vaccination requirements. So this was a significant change in that political position. I also want to mention, just as a standard process, when we consider advocacy letters related to legislation, we do reach out to those departments that are impacted for input, or those that might have subject matter expertise. In this case, we did reach out to our county health department. I can tell you that our leadership at the Health Services Agency and Public Health, as we were just describing, opposes this bill and was informative to us when we considered putting forward this recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. I also want to add that I was asked about why this was on consent and what's our process. It is a standard process for us to place legislative advocacy matters on consent. We do reach out to individual board members to have conversations on some of the policy matters, And then the CEO does set the agenda, whether it's consent or non-consent. It is routine for us to place these matters on consent, and there are many examples over the last several years where we've had opposition letters for a variety of legislative issues that were on consent. So I do want to there was one more note that I wanted to add, that over the last 24 hours, I was at least informed that our superintendent of schools, Scott Kuykendall, also did oppose this legislation on behalf of, at least he's our elected official locally representing school districts. So I just wanted to make that comment, and I think that's all I've got for you.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, and I received a phone call from Scott yesterday that wanted to make sure that we pointed this out, that he was in opposition to it also, just so everybody would know that. Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Jody. Okay, now we're going to go through the public comment cards that I have. We'll start off with Stephen Moore. Steve, good morning, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Mr. Chairman.
Tell me the bus was on time today.
Yes, the bus was on time
Yes,
today.
very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, other supervisors, Mr. Hayes and Mr. Bose. I am fully in support of item 5B8. I think this board should oppose SB 871. Senator Pan, who is a board-certified pediatrician and the author of the bill, I'm certain had a good motive in writing the bill, but it's clearly an overreach in light of what we know about COVID and its effects on children, so we don't need the bill. But I fully believe that based on the number of comments that have been made about COVID in front of this board over the last year, it's not just a simple consent item. I think it merits a separate vote, and I actually believe it merits a recorded vote conducted by the clerk of the board, but naturally that's at your discretion. But that's my personal belief on that. But I want to also repeat a comment that I made at the Transit Authority Board meeting last month. We're very spoiled in this country. We get the chance to speak to our elected representatives. There are many people around the world who don't get that chance. They either get told what's going on and that's it, or they don't get told anything at all. So we're very spoiled, and we need to be very grateful for that. And so that's my opinion on this particular measure. Mr. Chairman and Supervisors, thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning.
Steve, thanks for being here. Okay, next up we have Corinne Whitlow. Corinne, good morning. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. So I am here in support of this opposition letter to Senator Pan. I've been up here time and time again talking about our children are not at risk from death of COVID, and we now know that the vaccine doesn't prevent infection, so there's no need for this. And then to take away the personal exemption belief is just a very sad thing, that they feel like they have the power to take away the one last thing that as parents have to control the bodies of our children. So I'm not here to talk science. I've done that time and time again. I'm not here to debate any of those things. I support this letter. What I am here to do is to make a recommendation that we add Senator Eggman, Borges, and Assemblyman Flora to the CC of this letter. Thank you.
Corinne, thank you. Okay, and next up, Joni, come on back. Joni Creed. I tried to give you a little rest there.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I just wanted to remind you, gentlemen, last time I stood before you, I let you know, as long as our county data on their website is up to date and accurate, and I'm assuming that it is, only 14% of our 5 to 11-year-olds in this county are vaccinated for COVID as of right now, 14%. So I am encouraging you to support this and vote to please give that 86% of those children, of my children, your support in trying to knock this bill down. It will impact our county in a huge way. It will impact our state in a huge way. And like Corinne said, we've given you a lot of the science and the data, so I won't beat a dead horse, but I'm asking you to support this. Thank you.
Thanks, Joni. Okay. Anybody else like to speak about this? Come on up. Good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. I didn't fill out a little card, but
that's okay.
I was rushing in here this morning.
Just give us your name. That's okay.
Tairi Palomino, and I'm from Patterson.
Very good.
I'm a mom of 2 attending Patterson schools. I'm here today to thank you for taking the initiative to write an opposition letter about SB 871. I have 2 kids, like I said, in school, and they have been without a mask for weeks now, and they're finally getting back to normal. I think at this point in time, we can agree that our kids are not in danger. They are not a danger to our community like people want to make it seem. We do not have an overwhelming amount of cases in our Patterson schools. There's no need to keep bullying parents with their kids' education. They deserve to have an education regardless of what personal medical choices families make, because that's what it should be, a choice. A choice for those who weigh out the risks and decide to get vaccinated, to get a medical treatment, recognizing that there is side effects. I'm here in representation of a lot of moms that can't be here today because they're at work, a lot of moms that have little ones at home and can't make it out to these meetings. But I know many, many moms who are feeling anxious, are feeling helpless because they're being given an ultimatum, basically. Vaccinate your kids or they can't attend school. This is an overreach of power and a way of saying that they know that the government knows what's best for our kids. My kids were given to me. I will be the one that will be held accountable for keeping them safe, and I have that responsibility. It is my God-given right as their parents, but the government has no say in what medical decisions I make for my kids. We have never mandated the flu vaccine before, and it's always been a decision. We have a list of other vaccines that are required for school, but those are also different vaccinations that are actually stopping transmission of those infectious diseases, which is not the case with COVID-19. I ask you to please keep standing up for our kids, for our communities. It's not easy to go against the grain of what everybody else is doing. It is our duty to stand up for what's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Bellamy. Thanks for coming down. Okay, come on up. Good morning. How are you?
A little nervous.
Don't be nervous. You're doing great.
My name is Christina Calderon. I'm a Stanislaus County resident. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. And I'm a follower of Christ. And I stand up here today well outside my comfort zone, but my voice needs to be heard. The Bible tells me in Proverbs 31:8 that I should open my mouth for the speechless. And for me, those that are speechless are my children. We need to oppose SB 871. I should have the choice whether or not my child be injected with this vaccine. Where there is risk, there should be choice. I love my children more than anyone, and I will make the best decisions for them. I'm in full support that the board write an opposition letter against SB 871.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming down. Okay, anybody else like to come up before? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. I don't know if there's any other comment, or we'll just...
I'd like to make some comments
Go ahead.
before we pass, or if this passes. So first of all, I'm thankful that this item was pulled from the consent agenda, because I do believe that we should be discussing this item and its merits. There's been no substantive discussion of this bill to date, no report from our legislative advocate, no request from any state or local state legislator that we do so. But just bringing it back locally for all of us. I'm proud of the work that Stanislaus County has done in providing vaccines to everyone that wants one. We were one of the first counties in the state to provide widely accessible vaccination clinics, and I'm proud of the work that we all contributed to make sure that everyone that wanted to be vaccinated is vaccinated. That being said, I've been consistent throughout the pandemic in respecting jurisdiction of other elected bodies. Like other counties in California, our board could have tried to impede on the autonomy of local school boards or city councils by attempting them to force to institute vaccine requirements or not, but we declined to do so. In this case, I again would be cautious. Let's be clear. Like our public health director and school superintendent, I'm not in favor of SB 871. It appears to be a one-size-fits-all approach that does not accurately address local conditions. If we would like to have a further public health discussion on the merits of this bill, then I would be in favor. If we have learned anything over these past few years, is that we need more free and honest discussion about controversial topics like this. What we do not need more of is partisan, political rhetoric which aims to divide our community. So if you want a hearing, let's set it. Let's have a legislative advocate inform the author and supporters of the bill of the hearing, the date and time. Let our school officials and medical authorities give us their valuable opinion also. But if it's the prerogative of the board to send this letter, then I'll support that decision. We need to all work harder to unify our community, especially during times like these, not engage in meaningless political stunts. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Manny. Any other comments or? Okay, we will, the addition of the CCs, that's not a problem with anybody, is it?
I think one name that wasn't mentioned was Assemblymember Adam Gray, who represents a part of this district as well.
Yeah, and just for a matter of the record, we routinely share these documents with all of our local delegations, so I apologize it's not noted on the letter, but that's our routine process.
Perfect. Okay, very good. All right, then let's just bring this back to the board and we'll look for a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, guys. Thank you all. Okay. We will now move on to our discussion items. Item 7.1, approval of agreement between the County of Stanislaus and California Forensic Medical Group, Inc. for inmate healthcare services. Sheriff Jeff Dirksey, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'm doing well. Members of the board, Mr. Hayes and Mr. Bowes. The contract that we're going to present this morning is the result of many months of work. The WellPath contract is the largest contract in the county, and it exists specifically to serve the medical needs of our inmates. And what you will see here is obviously an updated contract. I think the last one was 7 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, so obviously there are going to be some cost increases in there. But I really want to focus on the increase in service levels, specifically around the mental health aspect. As you all know, we have a sicker, more violent inmate population, many of whom suffer from mental illness, and that has been internally, as we look to be sensible about our request, that is the focus that we specifically at the Sheriff's Department have, and you'll hear from Chief Ferreira at some point in this on the needs of probation as well. But that has been kind of the primary driver at the Sheriff's Office, is addressing that particular level of service. So with that, I'm actually going to sit down. I'll turn it over to Brooke Freeman, our Finance Director at the Sheriff's Office, and she'll start this off, and you'll hear from a few folks, and obviously we will take any and all of your questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, Brooke, you're up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The county currently has 3 agreements for inmate healthcare services. The first is for adult and juvenile medical and adult mental health, and those are provided by the California Forensic Medical Group, also known as CFMG. There's also an agreement for jail-based competency treatment provided by CFMG, and this provides competency treatment to incompetent to stand trial adult offenders. The third agreement is juvenile mental health services, which are currently provided by the county's Behavioral Health and Recovery Services Department. The request for proposal for inmate healthcare services was published in the summer of 2021. 3 organizations submitted proposals to a team of evaluators from the Chief Executive Office, Probation, Sheriff, and GSA Purchasing. The proposals were evaluated on the RFP documents submitted, the company's qualifications, understanding of the project, reference checks, as well as pricing. WellPath, who does business as CFMG in California, came out as a top scorer and was notified of the county's intent to award in October of 2021. Sheriff and probation teams worked through negotiations to get the exact services needed for our inmate and detainee population. There are several additions included in the new agreement to include a staffing increase of 12.85 FTEs for a total of 87.3 FTEs. I'll now hand it over to Captain Frank Martinez to talk about basic jail medical and adult mental health additions.
Good morning.
Hey, Frank.
I'll quickly go over some of the changes to the contract being proposed as it pertains to jail medical. The only real change is currently the court holding facility, which houses offenders as they appear for court briefly. They're there for a very short period of time, is being staffed by a registered nurse. we felt to be appropriate to, or better utilization of these resources to convert that to a licensed vocational nurse who could still meet the needs of the population during that brief time that they're at the court holding facility, and through that cost-saving measures, reallocate those funds to staff a registered nurse in our outpatient housing unit 24/7. Currently, that unit houses our acute offenders in custody, and WellPath bills us on a per diem rate per day an individual is housed in there. However, over the course of the last 2.5 years, we've had an offender in there every single day, so we thought it would be an appropriate time to transition from a per diem method to a definite FTE to care for that population while housed in there. As the sheriff discussed, Stanislaus County is no different than most jail facilities where we have a high level of mental health offenders in our custody, whether it be a history of suicide, suffering from depression, anxiety, or a diagnosed clinical that requires medication. So we really wanted to take this opportunity to enhance the services to this population. I feel like we've accomplished that through these increases in the staffing. These increases will not only allow us to meet the current needs of the mental health population, but take a more proactive approach in treating those individuals with a history of suicide, prescribed medications, see them on a more frequent basis, and those encounters would allow for longer periods of time and reduce the number of individuals needing to see mental health but roll over due to the staffing restrictions on mental health. This would also allow for an increased presence on our campus. Currently, mental health is on site 7 days a week during business hours, which is typically day shift. But with these added positions, we allow for staffing on both day shift, swing shift, and more immediately meet the needs of the population of individuals in our custody. And as we look to increase our mental health staff, and as probation, our WellPath looks to start providing services for juveniles, offenders, when it pertains to mental health, that is going to come with more supervision. So we've accounted for both the clinical and doctor level supervision for this, for the mental health staff who will serve both the administrative role and a clinical role in ensuring that program is just efficient and the population is being served appropriately. And lastly, Stanislaus County looks to transition to a medicated assistant treatment program, which is an evidence-based model which has become the standard, and it's a different approach to treating substance abuse disorders for incarcerated individuals utilizing both medication and therapeutic means. And so by transitioning to this program, we felt it was needed to have a substance abuse counselor to ensure just the consistency of the program and the offenders being treated under this program. With that, those are the additions when it pertains to mental health staff. Unless there's any questions, I'll hand it over to Chief Ferreira.
Any questions for Frank?
Yeah, if I could just ask one question on the, thank you very much, Captain Martinez. On the return to competency that we're doing in the jail, originally we talked about we were sending people outside of the county. Now we're able to do it internally, which I think is probably a good thing. Mm-hmm. Are we keeping statistics to make sure that we're doing as good a job as we were when we were sending them out? Is there any tracking going on?
Yes, there's detailed tracking for that population. I apologize, I wasn't prepared to speak on that, but I can definitely provide those to you.
Okay, we can do that later. It's not even, it's just a thought that came up because normally we were briefed on this. We kind of went through all of these different issues, and that's something that just popped in my head. But if you can get that to me later, that would be fantastic.
Yes, sir.
Perfect, thanks. Any more questions? All right, Frank, thank you. Mark, good morning, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Chairman Withrow, members of the board, CO Hayes, County Counsel Bose, Mark Ferreira, the county's Chief Probation Officer. Thank you for the opportunity to briefly present on this contract this morning. The Probation Department is recommending that we contract with WellPath for the continued administration of medical services in our juvenile institutions and the addition of 3.2 FTE for WellPath to administer mental health services as well. The 3.2 FTE would represent the addition of 3 mental health clinicians and 1 psychiatrist who will serve incarcerated youth in crisis, experiencing suicidal ideation, and or youth in need of psychotropic medication. For many years, mental health services in the juvenile institutions were provided by mental health clinicians employed by Behavioral Health and Recovery Services, while WellPath provided medical services to our incarcerated youth. Due to the continued staffing challenges that have been experienced by behavioral health and recovery services and the benefits associated with having one provider provide both medical and mental health services, our department is recommending that WellPath provide both of these services in our juvenile institutions. A one-provider model for medical and mental health services has been proven as a successful model in our local jail that we feel that we can replicate. We also feel the one-provider model will enhance the sharing or release of information, eliminate any possible gaps in policies, establish one set of recommendations and treatment, and provide a continuity of care for our incarcerated youth. The 3.2 FTE would result in an increase to the probation department share of the proposed contract in comparison to the current agreement. Special revenue funding, which will be outlined in the forthcoming slides, is being contributed to mitigate the increased cost of the contract. So with those brief comments, I'm available for any questions that you either have, either now or at the conclusion of the presentation.
Very good. Mark, just real quick, would substance use disorder, would you guys also, as we talked about, we were adding a counselor for substance use disorder, is that also going to be available in your facility? Anyway, with that person, I don't know if that's, or is that an issue even, do you find, within, besides mental health issues, substance use disorders?
Oh, it's an issue. We have an outside contractor who's going to be zeroing in on that issue. Primarily, WellPath will be focusing more on the mental health issues of our youth.
Very good. All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mark? Okay, Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So as we increase this contract, it does come with a cost increase, and so we're also aware of the national crisis facing healthcare workers and the ability to recruit and staff. We're also in receipt of the letter provided by the nurses union voicing their concerns, and so taking all that into consideration to ensure, most importantly, that the staff needed to provide for this population is on site as per outlined in the contract. We did adopt language in this contract that essentially would allow us to be compensated for any positions not being met in the contract. So how we plan to accomplish this is there is language that would also require WellPath to provide a monthly detailed staffing report for each day to include a breakdown by facility and shifts of individuals who are working that day, which would allow us to ensure that the appropriate staff to include a licensure was present as outlined in the contract. So as we obtain this report, we would compare it to Item D, which is a detailed staffing plan outlined in the contract, which breaks down staffing requirements for each facility, each shift, and broken down by licensure. And any portions of the contract not being met would allow us to essentially be reimbursed to ensure we're not paying for a service that we are not receiving, also while allowing us the opportunity to hold WellPath accountable should they enter a staffing crisis where they were not able to contractually meet their obligations as it relates to staffing.
Okay, very good.
Okay, the annual cost of the agreement in fiscal year 22-23 is about $20.1 million, with an annual increase of 3.5% throughout the term of the agreement. This agreement is funded with 81% general fund contribution and 19% of other revenue sources. The 19% of the other revenue sources includes a reimbursable agreement with the California Department of State Hospitals to provide jail-based competency treatment program services for adults, community correction partnership funding through AB 109 realignment that includes a base jail amount and also provides 25% of the total cost for AB 900 jail expansion, the Youthful Offender Block Grant, which is a probation special revenue source, and the Supportive and Therapeutic Options Program, which is pass-through funding through the Community Services Agency, will be used to fund a portion of the juvenile mental health costs. Fiscal year 21-22 included $15.1 million in appropriations, which supported the existing level of service, but due to increased services and costs with the new agreement, a budget adjustment is needed to cover the additional costs. The increased cost for this fiscal year requires an increase of appropriations of $381,000 for the sheriff, funded with $193,000 of estimated revenue and $188,000 funded by general fund contribution. An increase in appropriations of $104,000 for probation will be funded with fund balance from the Youthful Offender Block Grant. To be included in the proposed budget submittal for fiscal year 22-23 is $20.1 million in combined appropriations, $3.8 million in estimated revenue, and $16.3 million in general fund contribution in the probation and sheriff's budgets. The new agreement has an estimated increase general fund contribution of $2.6 million over the current agreement. There are 4 staff recommendations for your consideration. Number 1, approve the agreement between the County of Stanislaus and California Forensic Medical Group for inmate healthcare services. Number 2, authorize the chairman of the board to sign the agreement for the period of May 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2027, reserving the right to extend for 2 additional one-year periods. Number 3, authorize the use of $188,000 in appropriations for contingencies by 4/5 vote of the Board of Supervisors. And number 4, direct the auditor-controller to increase appropriations and estimated revenue in the Sheriff's Adult Detention Expansion Budget Unit, increase appropriations in the Sheriff's Detention Budget Unit, and increase appropriations in the Probation Youth Offender Block Grant Budget Unit. And that concludes our presentation for the Inmate Healthcare Services Agreement, and staff is available to answer any questions you may have.
Very good. Thanks, Brooke and Frank. Thank you, guys, and Mark. Okay, any questions from the board before we go to the public? No questions? Okay, I do have some public comments with regard to this one, a couple cards. And the first one we'll start off with is Brianna Carbeling. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that last name. Brianna, good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Carbeling?
Carbeling, yes.
Very good.
So I worked at Stanislaus County Jail for the last 5 years.
Brianna, can I get you to pull that mic over in front?
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
I've been working for Stanislaus County Jail for the last 5 years. I'm speaking on behalf of my coworkers at WellPath who provide medical and mental health services at the county jail. I'd like to start by thanking the sheriff and the county for strengthening the enforcement and accountability language in the contract and accepting our recommendations. I'd also like to underscore the urgency of addressing the severe short staffing in the jail. It's difficult for many of us to attend this meeting because it's in the morning and many of us work, but please know that the issue of short staffing is extremely important to everyone. It's one of the reasons why we formed a union 2 years ago. I'd like to briefly speak to why it's so important that the county enforce safe staffing levels at the jail. I work in intake, which means I'm the one to assess each person's medical health and decide if this person is medically stable to be in the facility. If I get pulled out of intake, that leaves intake with no nurse. So if an emergency were to break out, they'd have to wait for me to come back. If I have to go out to one of our east or west side facilities for an emergency, that delays patient care. It's unnecessary. If the nurse was there, then they would be able to respond to that emergency immediately. In critical moments when someone is in need of CPR, you only have a few minutes before someone starts losing brain cells and recovery becomes less likely. At that point, you begin playing with people's lives. If I get back from an emergency and there's a line waiting at intake and there's a backup, I feel the pressure to get through those people's assessments. I take as much time as I can, but I do feel rushed at times. People being booked into custody are in a vulnerable position, and our assessment of their physical and mental health determines what happens to them after booking, what kind of care they will receive. That shouldn't be rushed, where there can be serious consequences. The short staffing makes a day-to-day work difficult, and we work so much overtime, it's burning out the little bit of nurses we do have left. New hires don't want to stay and leave shortly after being hired because of staffing issues. This puts our licensure at risk as well as patient safety. I am hopeful that the newly proposed positions and enforcement language will result in safer staffing, but we have seen WellPath interpret the contract requirements for a minimum number of RNs in such a way that the public safety East facility and hospital units often just have an LVN on the floor, and the only RN is a supervisor who is usually tied up into their administrative duties. This is dangerous when there are many new admits who may be detoxing, placing sick calls, or having emergencies. LVNs end up answering these emergencies when an RN should be going out with them. In light of that, my coworkers and I do have one clarifying question about the contract. In the contract, that includes 3 different sections that address staffing. One of them is Detailed Staffing Plan, Exhibit D, that lays out the number of FTEs per classification, shift, and facility. The contract is not clear whether it's a minimum staffing matrix or just a plan that can be enforced. If possible, we'd like to request that the sheriff clarify this point. It is important for us to understand whether the county can recoup funds for the staff that aren't provided based on this staffing plan. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Brianna. Okay, next up we have Julie Nielsen. Julie, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. Thank you. I am here speaking on behalf of some of the custody nursing staff who couldn't be here to work, and I will read their names at the end of the statement. I would first like to thank the sheriff and his affiliates for taking the time to listen to our concerns and acting upon them by working together to create verbiage that directly impacts our recent staffing issues and helps protect the workers and patients on the inside. However, after reviewing the language in the proposed contract, there are notable areas of concern that I believe need attention. Our larger facilities, east and west, are there where there are major staffing needs are where they are most impacted by the staffing shortages. There are no protections at these facilities, including within the minimum staffing protections, other than having an available RN on site to assist. This means there could potentially have our larger facilities without a dedicated RN at East and West, and possibly at R&R, creating a significant liability and leaving our most vulnerable patient population at risk of delay in care or worse. I am confident WellPath CFMG will use its minimum standard of available RN on site to assist to remain working short-staffed at these larger facilities, utilizing the supervising RN as the available nurse and not staffing the floor as they have in the past. I believe it would be best practice and safe practice to ensure a dedicated RN is on site at East-West receiving and release 24-hour days, not only on an available basis. Thank you for your time and consideration. Your custody nursing staff, who unfortunately are working today and unable to make the meeting: Johnny Patia, Roshonda Mello, Jessica Pavio, Brooklyn Mello, Jessica Snow, and Kelly Burris. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Okay, next up we have Sonia Rifkin. Sonia, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. Thank you, Chairman and Supervisors and Sheriff Dirksey. So again, my name is Sonia Rifkin. I'm the Research Coordinator at the National Union of Healthcare Workers, which represents 100 healthcare workers at the jail. And the workers formed this union in 2020, partly in response to the staffing issues, as Brianna mentioned. I just wanted to add a couple comments on behalf of members who couldn't be here. So first, again, want to thank the Sheriff's Office for accepting this recommendation. This enforcement mechanism has proven impactful where it's been used in Alameda County, where that county has recouped $2.7 million of taxpayer funds. Unfortunately, the flip side of that is that staffing that should have been on the floor, right? And so we just are here to appreciate that this is in the contract and also underscore that this is a long process of making sure that the taxpayer dollars are not only respected, but are being put to where they're sorely needed. So, a second edition directs WellPath to send monthly staffing reports to the sheriff's office. And I just want to underscore that this level of transparency is really critical. How else can the county know when the jail is short registered nurses to respond to emergencies, as Brianna described, or short mental health providers who can make sure that patients get the medication that they're assessed for on intake, which folks are supposed to receive in a certain time frame. So, the contract before you, as Lieutenant Martinez described, has expanded services, but at the end of the day, you can't carry out services without staff. So, as the board deliberates on what's the county's largest contract, WellPath is at the helm of a pretty severe and chronic staffing shortage. And WellPath has a way to go to live up to the proposed contract's promises. And those promises include almost 13 new employees and IMQ accreditation within 9 months. Some of those positions, it's just important to note, are quite long overdue. For example, there's a new discharge planner. Even though WellPath was supposed to be doing discharge planning for mental health patients for the duration of the expiring contract. And for those not familiar, this is a really essential service that connects people with care upon release so that they can get supported in the community and avoid encounters with law enforcement. So, how did they get away with this without this position for so long? It's really services like these that prevent people from cycling in and out of the jail and having mental health crises in custody where they really can't be properly treated. So the improvements to this contract really reflect, we hope that these improvements reflect a greater level of scrutiny and compliance monitoring to prevent these kinds of shortcomings in the future. And I want to speak to something that you mentioned, Lieutenant Martinez. All healthcare employers are struggling to hire right now, and much of that we see in our union is partly because when employers choose not to prioritize the safety of healthcare workers and patients, this is a disincentive for healthcare workers to join this workforce. The last time we met with some of you, we were asking for your support because the workers were trying to get N95 masks at the height of the pandemic and COVID testing. And so, we really believe that healthcare employers like WellPath and by extension the sheriff and the county can recruit and retain workers by providing, safe and sustainable working conditions and living wages. And to that end, I just wanted to note, we've been bargaining with WellPath for over a year for a first contract. We've made some progress in recent weeks. The company initially maintained that wages were pretty competitive despite obvious difficulty retaining folks. And this contract, as did the last one, has a proposed escalator of 3.5%. But because it's important to retention, I wanted to mention that it's not a guarantee that WellPath will pass this increase on to its employees, ensuring a living wage that makes people want to work and support our most vulnerable community members. The company's most recent offer for raises is just 1.5% in the first year, followed by 2% in the last. All other Union County employees have 3%. I see a yellow light. So, we hope to see WellPath do more on this front. We'll continue to bargain in good faith. As I said, glad to see so many improvements, and we will intend to work closely with management, the sheriff's office, and the board if need be to monitor and ensure that staffing levels are safe and adequate. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Sonia. Okay. That's all the speaker cards we have. Do we have anybody else that would like to come up and speak about this issue? Okay. Seeing none, I will bring it back to the board for some more comments, questions, or
just
motion.
A quick comment. And again, as I said, the board has been briefed, so you might not hear lots of questions. And this is our biggest contract. And I think originally when they rolled out the potential increase is 3.5%, it is a big, big contract, almost at $2 million a month. And so immediately you think, where can we cut? But the bottom line in the scheme of things is that, and I think the sheriff had pointed this out in the very beginning, and captain, new captain, he was a lieutenant, but now he's a captain. I think you pointed out that the reality is the people coming into the jail are more in distress than they were before, and it puts everyone at risk. So the increasing the full-time equivalents, both in the juvenile hall and at the jail, are a good thing. If we're going to try and not send people out in worse condition than when they came in, we have an obligation to do something inside the jail. And mental health, substance use disorder, co-occurring disorders are all issues. To the staff, thank you for what you do. I've been in the jail many times and see, the stress of the job. But the same thing goes for the deputies that are working in there and the people on the street. It's the life somehow we're living now. But trying to increase staffing, it was one of the requests about that we don't pay for staffing that we don't have, because it is a tough environment. We've seen that within the county organization to hire people in the mental health and or the medical field. And so we'll continue to do the best job. I know that our HR department has spent a lot of time and effort on figuring out recruitment and retention within the county, and I hope WellPath does the same. So I will be supporting this. Again, it is something that we definitely need to continue to watch, the increase in costs and jail medical, but I appreciate Brooke, Frank, and Jeff for all that you do.
Very good, Dick. I just want to clarify, you've been in the jail visiting several times. Okay. So I'm aware. Any other questions or comments? I want to thank you guys too. Sorry, Buck, did you? Okay. Thank you guys too. Great presentation, both Brooke and Frank, and Jeff and Mark. And just a couple of quick things. I want to take this back even a little bit further with regard to our increase in our mental health treatment and the substance use disorder treatment. Back in AB 109, what was that, 2014 or so when that happened? I can't remember how far back that happened, when we emptied out our state prisons and sent all these individuals back here to the county. It was all about, as upset as we were that was happening, it was all about, well, we thought we could probably do a better job than what was happening in the state prisons at the time. And I would argue that it's no coincidence that the explosion of our homelessness began to happen right at that time, because it's just by the nature of individuals who commit crimes are in jail, they usually have mental health issues or substance use disorder issues, which contribute to the criminal activity that they got involved in. So part of our marching orders at that point was we are going to be able to treat these people that they're sending back here to our counties that go into our jails, and we were letting out people because we didn't have space for them at the time, and keeping the worst of the worst in there. I think this is just another arm, the next move here, and I think it's great. I think it's money well spent for us to be able to as expensive as this seems, that we treat individuals for health and mental health issues, substance use disorders. It's money very well spent that we will get dividends on if we're successful and stop that revolving door that we seem to have with these individuals. And again, I say it's just part of the next phase of what we should be doing to get there, to help these people get better and get back into their lives. And so I think that's good stuff. And I also think with regard to the employees, the staffing, the monthly reports we're going to be getting with regard to staffing, still everybody's having trouble hiring people. We know that. We know what a nightmare it is just across the country right now to find individuals for positions. But it's great. We'll get these staffing reports and make sure that we can hold them accountable. To make sure that these individuals are there and working, we're getting what we pay for. And then just one quick question with regard to the contract. It's a 5-year contract, it looks like. As far as an off-ramp, if we find something that's going wrong, if there is an issue, I'm sure we've got the ability to, sorry, Tom, I look at the attorney when I go there. We've got the ability to get out of this if they aren't holding their end of the bargain. That's correct? Is that correct?
I haven't reviewed the contract myself, but I'm looking at Brooke.
You are correct. It is, I think there's a 180-day notification.
Perfect. So if something was going south, we'd be able to get out of this thing. And if we they weren't performing as they said they would. Okay, very good. That's all that I had. All right, if there's not any other questions or comments, again, thank you guys very much. A job well done, and we appreciate the staff that are here and all the work that you guys do in the jail. We know it's not an easy job, but it's a commendable job, and it really can make a difference in the community if we're successful, especially when we're dealing with the mental health issues and the substance use disorders. So,
Motion to approve all 4 staff recommendations.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you guys very much. Okay, let's move on to item 7.2, approval to establish an alternate defenders an alternate defender's office to provide alternate indigent defense for clients for which the public defender has declared a conflict of interest, effective January 1. Maybe hold on 1 second. We just lost 2 of them. They'll be right back here. Angelica and Jennifer, how are you guys?
Good.
Good, good.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we will wait for just a
Yeah,
little
just
bit.
give them
until
just
we
a
get
second here and
No
we'll-
problem.
yeah.
Allows us to set up.
Yeah, that's perfect. Take your time. Boy, the pressure's on these guys, isn't it, out there?
Mini break.
It's very dramatic.
Yes. How about Kansas? Was everybody happy with Kansas winning, or were they going for UNC? I was going for Duke, actually. I lost mine. He was at the Duke game. Wow.
We could ask him if he left.
Yeah, I could have asked him.
Yeah, it's posed.
Don't worry, we're waiting for you.
We're back. We can start.
We're going to wait for one more. Okay. Man, did you go to the Duke game? Did you go to the Duke game? The Duke basketball game?
Not this one.
Oh, okay.
I went to the last one.
Okay, all right, just checking. All right, we're good to go.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Withrow, members of the board, CEO Hayes, and County Council Bowes. Today we are here to provide a presentation on establishing an alternate defender's office to provide indigent defense for clients for which the public defender has declared a conflict of interest. I am Jennifer Jennison, the Stanislaus County Public Defender, and I am joined by Angelica Ramos of the Chief Executive Office. I will take you through our presentation and answer any questions you may have. In Stanislaus County, the public defender is appointed to represent the indigent accused. The public defender's ultimate obligation is to properly represent each client, protecting their interests in the case, ensuring high-quality advocacy. If the public defender cannot properly represent the client's interest due to a conflict or otherwise, a conflict attorney is appointed by the court to represent the client. A conflict of interest arises when the public defender already represents a witness adverse to the potential client or multiple defendants require separate counsel.
So a little bit of history is we've had quite a bit of activity around the model for providing the representation to indigents, as Jennifer just described. So prior to 2018, you've got a little model there on the left. the public defender, when declaring a conflict of interest, would send the individual back to the court, who would assign the case to a flat fee contract, which we refer to as a Conflicts One contract. So the county paid a local firm a flat fee to represent cases. If there was still a conflict of interest there, as you might have in like a multi-defendant case, we had a separate contract. Conflicts Two would provide that representation. Beyond that, if there was still a conflict, then the case would get issued out for representation to a local attorney who was on a defense panel, a list of attorneys who were paid on an hourly basis to provide representation. So right around 2018, we had our eye on just efficiency and total cost of the system, and started to see significant increase in cost around alternate defense panel costs, those hourly costs for attorneys. So in 2018, in an effort to add efficiency and add a little more cost control and predictability to those costs, we added, they're circled in yellow, a third conflicts contract as an option for representation for conflict cases before those would get issued to the defense panel. And we did see a decrease in panel costs. You'll see that on the next slide. Just as soon as we talk a little bit about the model we're wanting to recommend today. This would be, or the one we have today. In 2019, we came back to the Board of Supervisors in June of 2019 and changed the model from the 3 conflict contract model and panel attorneys to the public defender having one contract with a local firm to provide all of the representation. That firm is referred to as the alternate indigent defense firm. Any conflicts beyond that firm get issued out via contracts that the local conflicts oversight administrator issues to local attorneys. So attorneys that are willing to provide representation get flat fee contracts, and therefore we no longer had a need for the alternate defense panel that was paid on an hourly basis. So in terms of costs, in fiscal year 17-18, when we had our two conflict contract model, you can see costs there totaling $4.1 million among all of the costs paid to both the flat fee contracts we had with the 2 conflicts firms, as well as the hourly attorney costs. And that year, our hourly attorney costs, which is in the row right in the middle, exceeded what we were paying our contractors with about 10% of the caseload that our local contractors had. So in order to bring some more cost control to that, we added that Conflicts 3 contract in 2018, and you can see on the fiscal year 18-19 actuals that we began to see a reduction in costs down to just a little over $1 million in those hourly panel attorney costs, which was the intent, was to see if we could institute something that would provide a little more cost control. When we went to the current model that we're in with the alternate indigent defense firm and the subcontracting of attorneys, you see in the last 2 years listed in fiscal year 19-20 and 2021 that we were paying more to the alternate indigent defense model, but we started to see further reduction, significant reduction on those hourly attorney costs, which was the intent of the contract. So fiscally, the contract has performed really well. So, as mentioned before, we currently contract with one firm to provide conflict of interest oversight and to procure those subcontracts for conflict of interest clients. That contract ends on June 30th, 2022 of this year. So with that, today's recommendation is to essentially keep the same model, except where you see over on the left-hand side, we currently have a contracted out model, alternate indigent defense. Instead, the recommendation would be to bring that in-house and create an arm of the public defender's office, be part of the county department, and we're referring to this as the alternate defender office. This would still have a subcontracting component so that conflict of interest clients client representation beyond the alternate defender's office could be subcontracted out to local attorneys. Is there anything else there, Jennifer, you'd like to mention about that? Okay.
Next slide, please.
All righty.
Authority to establish an alternate defender's office is supported by case law and formal State Bar Opinion 2002-158. The ADO, while formally a branch of the Public Defender's Office, will operate as a completely distinct law office separate from the existing Public Defender's Office, except for some shared administrative functions. The recommendation is to establish a new alternate defender's office when the current contract ends. To satisfy ethical rules and case law, a glass wall would be established to separate the attorneys in each office. This is an internal policy restricting the attorneys in the two offices from accessing each other's cases. The attorneys in each office can represent their respective clients without interference or observation of the other attorneys and will be considered to work in separate law offices. Employees in each office will maintain the competences of individual clients and will be sensitive to the required degree of separation between the ADO and the public defender. The ADO's physical office, computer systems, file storage, library, phone system, office keys, and letterhead will be entirely separate and distinct from the main public defender's office. Individual cases in the alternate defender's office will be opened, litigated, and closed under separate file numbers. In some ways, we are on the front end of this, but several other counties have been doing this for some time, and this includes Contra Costa, Humboldt, Santa Clara, Orange, San Diego, Tuolumne, and Solano. In all of these counties, the chief deputy reports to the public defender, but other than some limited direction and administrative support from the public defender, the alternate deputy office's chief deputy public defender will be responsible for all other operations of the ADO. The current vendor has approximately 1,100 combined felony and misdemeanor cases which will need to be transferred to the alternate defender's office. For context, the public defender's office handles approximately 11,000 cases per year and conflicts on a very small percentage of those cases. So approximately 10% will be continued for reassignment, which is a very small number of cases processed in our courthouse. Part of what we are requesting your approval on today is staffing for the new alternate defender's office. We are requesting a total of 8 new positions. These positions include 1 chief deputy public defender, who will be case carrying, as well as 3 deputy public defenders. We are requesting 2 legal clerks and 1 investigator to support the independent secretarial and investigative needs of the alternate defender's office. 1 caseworker is requested to support ADO clients with a constellation of complex needs and will coordinate placements and referrals for services. Anticipated outcomes include competent, vetted, and monitored attorneys, increased quality of legal representation, increased budget predictability, and leveraging the public defender's office's efficiencies, taking advantage of policies, procedures, resources, and administrative oversight already in place in the existing public defender's office. This will ensure uniformity in representation for all indigent persons accused of crimes in Stanislaus County.
Preliminary ongoing costs of this, including this new office in the indigent defense budget, are estimated to be $3.8 million. The indigent defense budget has a budget level of $4.4 million. So they're able to do this within the existing budget that they have, that the department has. So we're not here to ask for additional funding, but we are here to ask for support to include that of the addition of staffing to the model. Although slightly more expensive than what you saw in the earlier slides, this provides more efficiency. It also provides casework services, as Jennifer mentioned earlier, which is something that our current vendor is not able to provide. And we have seen an uptick, at least in the current year, as court operations have started to resume, and there are more cases being referred to alternate indigent defense and contracted out that make it very equivalent to what we anticipate this creation of this new office and the total budget to be this next fiscal year. With the contract that we have with Perry and Associates ending on June 30th of this year, the anticipated implementation date for this new office would be July 1st of 2022. With that, we have 4 staff recommendations for your consideration, and that is to authorize the public defender to establish the alternate defender's office for this conflict of interest client representation, to authorize the public defender to negotiate and execute a site lease and any agreements that are necessary to establish this new alternate defender's office, to amend the salary and position allocation resolution to reflect those recommendations as outlined in the staffing impact section of the report, effective the first full pay period following this board's approval, and to authorize budget transferability between the public defender's 2 general fund budget units to ensure that these end the year in a positive position. With that, staff are available for questions.
Very good. Thank you, guys. Just a quick question, if I could. We talked about, and maybe the caseworker is that position. When we met and talked, how we have these, I referred to them as clinicians in the public defender's office. This case, is that the same thing that we're looking to do here in the alternate? Did we get that person in there?
That's exactly the same thing, Chairman.
Okay, perfect, yeah, because I think that's critical to what we've been doing and what you're doing, Jennifer, in your office, is to have these clinicians to get involved with not only trying to defend these people, but get involved in their lives and their families and what's going on and try to prevent them from coming back. So we've got one of those people.
Yes, we do.
In this part. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Questions? Bach?
Thank you for your report. With such a short amount of time, do we have a good idea that we're going to be able to fill those positions?
We have already brought on board an attorney from the existing vendor's office to the public defender's office, and we are in a continuous recruitment. That is an ongoing process, hiring attorneys so that we can make that target date.
And do we have an idea, a building that we're going to be occupying?
Yes, it's a location right close to where we are, very close to the courthouse.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Buck. Manny?
No, thanks for the presentation.
Any other questions? Okay. We do have one public comment card with regard to this item. Judge Robert Westbrook.
Morning.
Robert, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you for coming down here and seeing us.
For having me. It's my first time here. I think I swore some of you in, but so, I appreciate this opportunity.
Robert, I'm sorry, grab that mic, Your Honor, and put it up by there.
Sure. Just for the record, and ladies and gentlemen, my name is Rob Westbrook. I am the presiding judge of Stanislaus County Superior Court. I come here today to offer my support for this proposal. Most attractive feature of this effort is that you are seeking to ensure uniformity of representation across the board. That is a laudable goal, and I applaud you for taking this step. As an alumni of the Public Defender's Office and as a bench officer, high-level representation across these 2 offices is something that I value greatly. I'm also an alumni of the Contra Costa County alternate defender office, and it was a wonderful office staffed by elite attorneys providing excellent service, and I look forward to seeing that same level of service being provided in this county. So as a general matter, you have my double thumbs up, fist bump, congratulations, I applaud this effort. But we do have a number of concerns that were expressed to me by members of our bench, and they asked me to come here and share with you, and we want to be good partners with you in this effort, so we just want to talk about some pitfalls that we see on the horizon. we can't really have any conversation of where we are as a court without first talking about COVID. The last couple of years have been very difficult for all of us, and as we have struggled to deal with this pandemic. I sense from your earlier agenda item and some of your earlier public comments that I am addressing you from the other side of a very deep chasm that has divided our community and our country. And I regret that division, but I hope that we can keep having these conversations and keep trying to understand each other. But I want you guys to understand where we are as a bench and how this affects what we see coming down the pike. For the last 2 years, it's really been an existential question for us. It seems like you can have a criminal justice system, or you can avoid contracting a communicable and possibly deadly disease. But how do you have both? We took oaths to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. We all took that oath. And we understand on the bench that we couldn't do this if we closed our doors. So we had to make difficult choices to keep those doors open and to continue providing access to justice to our community. This last wave almost swept us away. We came within a knife's edge of having to close our doors. We had outbreaks in every division. We had quarantines in every division. We had to close all of our clerks' offices, and we were just a few illnesses away from having to shut the doors entirely. It was a close call. So those choices that we have made, we've been able to keep the doors open, thank goodness. But they have come with costs. I regret those. I own those. I will be the first to admit that these problems that we have are self-created, but I think created by necessity. Among those is delayed justice and a very large backlog of cases that we are attempting to work through right now. So that's our posture as you guys are talking about changing the way you do business. But even before this pandemic, we recognized that justice was taking too long in our county. We hired consultants, took a look at our processes, procedures, even our philosophy, to figure out a way we can restructure our case flow management to ensure that cases move quicker, justice is more expedient, and hopefully caseloads would also drop for your attorneys. We've begun implementing those. We have one department that's currently operating under this system. Another one will be joining in a month, and then hopefully the rest will follow later this summer. So we're hoping to put our foot on the gas. And while I am very pleased with your proposal, there are certain features that, if unaddressed, do have a potential to create further delays in the processing of these cases that we really can ill afford at this juncture. Of course, cases will have to be reassigned from, I guess, Complex 3, I call them Perry and Associates, AID, COA?
AID.
Yeah. Those cases will have to be reassigned, obviously. That will mean that new attorneys will have to get up to speed on those. Continuances will have to occur in those cases. Also, we have a number of cases that are being handled by contract attorneys. I understand the intention is to honor those contracts to their completion, but the reality is if these attorneys are no longer going to be able to slop at the county trough, I don't know if they're going to wait for the money to run out before they leave. Their cases will also have to be reassigned. And every time a case has to be reassigned, we start all over again with a new attorney. So that's a problem that you need to be aware of, and we will do what we can to ameliorate those problems. But the reality is change is hard, and that's going to be one of the difficulties we face. The second concern we had is staffing. If you look at the national standards for maximum public defender caseloads, I think you'll find that the recommendations are that they should not exceed 150 felonies or 400 misdemeanor cases per year per attorney. By these numbers, I think your alternate defender's office would be understaffed by these standards by perhaps 2 to 3 attorneys. Now, I recognize I'm a realist. I was a public defender. I know that these caseload recommendations are rarely achieved, but they are important. And the reason they are important is because understaffing causes more delays. They cause delays and continuances because attorneys cannot properly prepare their cases. These delays come with their own costs, both in terms financially of law enforcement officers waiting around for their cases to be called, but attorneys are in many different departments trying to cover all their various cases, so that results in overtime expenses. It causes the sheriff to have to transport inmates back and forth to multiple court dates, often meaningless court dates where nothing is accomplished because the preparation was not done. And of course, witnesses, victims are inconvenienced by having to come back numerous times. Justice is obviously delayed, if not outright denied by these delays. So also related to staffing, I understand the plan is to staff the ADO with level 5 attorneys. An excellent idea. I'm in full support of that. But I question where you're going to find these people. 4s and 5s do not grow on trees. You have to cultivate them and grow them in-house. It's really hard to recruit them from other counties, especially if your promises are a higher caseload and less pay. Very difficult. You have to give these people a reason to come, and you have to give these people a reason to stay. So I'm here to pound the table on behalf of my former coworker, who I see her cringing. I encourage you as you go forward to take a look at those standards, make sure that you are adequately staffing these offices and providing them with the resources they need to do the job you are tasking them with. The loss of a good attorney is a terrible thing for our county. It does incalculable harm to the administration of justice. We talk about training. Most of my training came from talking to older attorneys in the office, and when they aren't there, that training isn't happening. The next level of concern that I have has to do with the flat rate fee for the next level of conflict representation. Believe me, I am extremely sympathetic with your need to control expenditures. I had the pleasure of having to process some of these fee requests when, for 987 funds, and let me tell you, some of these raised my blood pressure to extremely unhealthy levels. I mean, I'm spending your money, and it was causing me stress. So I get it. I understand that. But I am nervous about flat rate fees because it incentivizes attorneys to do less, cut corners, and justice will suffer. I think what you may find is now that you have this new alternate defender office, you're going to have representation up here, and then there's going to be a sharp cliff in your next level of representation. So I think we need to keep an eye on that. Make sure that there's flexibility and a willingness to entertain additional funding if requested. Otherwise, that drop-off will be steep. So to sum up, I do think this is a great idea. I think it's a long time coming. I think our county will be better for it if there is a commitment on your part to adequately staff and fund this project. There are going to be delays. That's just the nature of the beast, so I wanted you guys to be aware of that, understand that. We'll do what we can, but it's just going to happen. Thank you for your this opportunity to address you, and I wish you luck with this project.
Rob, if Your Honor, if you could just stay here just for a second. We got you here, so we're gonna get you for a second. I'm going to let just for a second if Jennifer could respond with regard to the delays and minimizing those delays, if she could.
Sure. I mean, the reality of the situation is, Your Honor, that there are a lot of delays based upon the current structure that exists and delays because of the particular vendor that is being used. So some cases are going to be continued. We are going to have our, elite attorneys, as you mentioned, placed into the new alternate defender's office. They will do their best to get up to speed. There will be a time of change and some bumps in the road. But I think ultimately the cases will move more quickly, the attorneys will be better prepared, and of course, as you're very well aware, the representation will be much better.
I 100% concur with that. I think the representation is going to be much better. And I don't offer these words as criticism in any sense. The reality is, as I am learning as presiding judge, change is hard. There's always someone willing to offer a counter opinion to your own. But I just want to say I appreciate what this board is doing, what Jennifer's doing, Ms. Jennison, excuse me. I've known her for 15 years, more than that. And I think this is ultimately going to be a good thing for our county. I think the timing is unfortunate, but I think the end result is going to be good.
Great, and thank you, Jennifer. And one last thing, again, we don't get the presiding judge, Your Honor, Rob, here very often. So one other thing, this is off the subject matter that we're talking about, but now that we got you, I'm going to hit you.
Sentencing guidelines.
That's right. Yeah, I've got a problem, but no.
You want to know my judicial philosophy?
We are working on a homeless court here, and I don't know how much you're familiar with that, and kind of a mental health care court to some extent. And the governor's recently come out with his CARES court idea, which is helping us get traction. So we're looking forward really to working with you guys. I'm talking about your bench, to deal with these issues and coordinating with our public defender and our district attorney and all of us trying to come together and figure out how to deal with these individuals who've got 10 bench warrants and they keep ending up back out on the streets, and it's really not doing any service for them at all, and looking for a way to try to get them into services. And so I'm hoping that together we can get a court that specifically deals with these individuals so we can get them into treatment and get them help.
We've been approached and have begun initial conversations with Ruben Imperial.
Yep, Ruben's back there.
Over at probation. I'm an ally. I support the idea. But again, I would say that for this to succeed, there has to be, again, a commitment from the board, from this county, both in terms of staffing and funding. We've had specialty courts before. My fear is that they go the way of our Prop 36 court, where we don't even get a DA to appear. Maybe we don't get, I don't know if probation appears. We just have a public defender in there. I am in principle very, very much in favor of this idea. I think it would benefit our community, but would again urge that this board be committed to that proposal and not just be satisfied with, we have a homeless court, let it go, because we as a court, we're good at some things. We're really good at crime and punishment. Social problems, we're going to need help.
And we're here to work with you. We're really looking forward to that. Fantastic. So I appreciate that, to hear that from you, Rob. So we will have a lot of work to do, and we'll make this work. So, but thank you so much for being here. We so much appreciate you coming down.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Any other public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we will bring it back to the board for any further discussion, comments, or motions.
So just a quick comment. I'm generally in support of this. I take very seriously what the presiding judge just said about this changeover possibly being a slog, and we have to be committed, both the district attorney's office and the public defender, so that this doesn't create a secondary backlog in such a thing. I think once we get over that initial hump, this will work. It'll be more fluid for the whole court system. Appreciate you taking the time, Jennifer, to look into different methods. I appreciate you sitting down with the district attorney's office, as you guys have, and I just look forward to success. But there could be some growing pains because of staffing issues and other things, and it's good to acknowledge those up front.
Very good. Thanks, Vito. Any other questions, comments? I just want to thank you guys so much. And Helga, I know that you've worked hard on this too. And just to look at those cost-cutting measures from 4.1 down to 3.1, and I know it's not all about cost, and that's not, but it is important. And for $1 million to go away there, I think was a great thing. I had always thought over the years, as I'd watched this, as an hourly worker myself, as a doing my billable time as a CPA, and I would see these flat amounts that we would pay, and I just wondered, are we really getting our bang for our buck there? And it was concerning. And then just with regard to the quality of care and quality of legal service being provided to these individuals, I questioned also. And so I think it's a great idea to bring this back in. I know we talked about this a few years ago, and so it's good to see that happening. And I very much appreciate dropping in the caseworker into that portion, into that side of the glass wall also, so that they would also have that opportunity to do the things we're doing in the public defender's office. So I think this is going to, like Vito said, I'm sure we're going to have our bumps along the road here as we adjust to this, but in the long run, I think this is the best way to go. And like ultimately, if we're successful here and successful with our caseworkers and all the things that we're doing in the county, you guys will be sitting around twiddling your thumbs someday because you won't have anybody to defend. But I think we're probably won't be in my lifetime, but we're heading that direction, we hope. So thank you guys very much. So with that, we will look for a motion.
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposes? Pass unanimously. Thank you guys very much. Great work. Okay, let's move on to item 7.3, approval to consider and adopt a resolution of necessity to acquire real property. So we have a few of these Dave's going to present to us here. And I don't know if maybe the best way to do this, Dave, you tell me the best way. Do we want to do them all at once and then or do we want to do each one of them separately?
They're set up to be handled separately.
Okay, I think, Tom, so we're going to do each one of these separately.
Yes, you can do them all together. It's at your whim, I guess.
Okay.
If you want to take them all together, that would probably be the most expedient way to do it.
Okay, is that okay with you, Dave, if we did them? But we'll.
And we can
okay.
go back if somebody wants to talk about it. We have a slide for all four
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I guess the one thing that Jody should remind me of, I know we do have some public comment here, and I don't want to not give somebody their opportunity to talk about the specific property. So,
what we can
okay,
do is have David give his presentation. Once we finish with all of the properties, we can have the public comment period, and then you can go through and make your vote. And if we need to separate the vote on each of those properties out, we can do that.
Okay. Okay, let's go. Is that good, everybody?
You following? Okay.
Okay, Dave, you're up.
All right.
Here we go. Good morning.
Chair Withrow, Board of Supervisors, CEO Hayes, and County Council.
We brought our team here today, and to my right, your left, is Artin from Nosman. He's outside counsel. And Deputy County Counsel Todd James is here also in support of this. He's been a key member of our team, and also our project manager, Theron Roshan, and he's out in the audience today too. So thank you for having us today. This is on items 3 through 6 under discussion, and they're resolutions of necessity to acquire real property. Thought I'd have Artin just introduce himself and why maybe we're here.
Good morning, Chairman Withrow, Board of Supervisors, Mr. Hayes and Mr. Bose. My name is Artin Shaverdian. As Dave mentioned, I'm a partner with the law firm of Nosman LLP. Nosman serves out of 4 offices in California. We represent public agencies in various legal matters, including related to infrastructure projects, and specialize in right-of-way acquisitions. I have the privilege of being here this morning to answer any questions or legal issues that may come up. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions that do. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Dave to talk about the properties that are needed for this project.
Okay, thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Artin. So the slide up there right now is a Phase 1 of North County Corridor, the project limits. We go from Oakdale Road, actually from Clarabelle Road, south or north on Oakdale Road to the new alignment. New alignment heads east of Oakdale at a new signal, and then an interchange at Roselle. And after that, we climb and we go over the MID Canal, the BNSF tracks, and we land back down at a new Claus Road intersection with a signal. That's the project. And all 4 alternatives were the same in this reach. So we're asking the board to, at some point, what's necessary for Ron is the public interest and necessity. North County Corridor Project will improve the regional network circulation, it will relieve existing traffic congestion, support efficient movement of goods and services, enhance safety, and the environmental documents were certified on May 22nd, 2020. What we need to show is that this is the greatest public good and least private injury. All four local agencies did approve Alternative 1B as their preferred locally preferred alternative. And this was done through rigorous environmental study and public outreach. We were in the environmental phase for about a decade on this project, many public meetings. And the project has been designed to maximize the benefits to the public at large while minimizing impacts to private property owners. The project team has worked diligently to minimize the need for property acquisitions. The offers have been made as required by law. We hired an independent appraiser, fair market value offer was made. We do provide for all the acquisitions. State and federal law say we have to reimburse up to $5,000 for their own independent appraisal. And the county has attempted to negotiate an amicable settlement in good faith. We continue to do so, but we have been unsuccessful so far with these four. And so really important to note, we do negotiate the whole way. We won't ever stop talking to them. It's super important that we keep those lines of communication open and continue to negotiate with all the landowners. Here are the key Ron findings required. The public interest and necessity require the North County Corridor Project Phase 1. It's in the EIR, EIS was approved, as I said, May 22nd, 2020. Project is planned in the manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. The subject properties are necessary for the project, and the offer has been made to the parcel owners. And here's one of them. It's APN 075-024-0112 Gutierrez. That's discussion item 3. Here's what this is what the future North County Corridor will look across that parcel. That's the reason why it is a full take between the roads and the fill, the height of the road when the fill going down slope. We need the whole parcel. And I'll stop on the last one, but basically it's a repeat of everything we've already talked about. There'll be staff recommendations, unless you want to stop here and we can go through these.
Why don't we go ahead and stop here?
Okay,
Because I feel bad
sounds good.
if we're not going to, and I think that's probably why you guys set this up to begin with this way, so that everybody had their kind of day in
Right.
court, had their chance to talk. So, okay, let's stop on that one. And I do have, we're going to have public comment, and I do have a card here on this one, and it's from Daniel Del Rey and Paz Gutierrez. So I'm going to let each one of you come up, maybe one at a time if you'd like, or, oh, you sure can, yeah. Good morning, how are you guys? Thanks for coming down.
Thank you for having us, members of the board. You guys had a full day today. So I'm here with Caesar and Rebecca in regards to the property. They want to start off by saying they are in favor of improving the road for the sake of our county, right? I think where they have an issue is the disconnect between, or the empathy when it comes down to being a homeowner and finding a replacement property in this current market. They own a custom house, which is a little over 3,000 square feet with a guest house and a pool and solar, 5-car garage. I mean, it's a very custom home. And they were offered $1 million from, from, I believe, the project manager. And they did make an attempt to go out and try to seek a property that suits their needs. And in this market, we weren't able to find it. So we're not quite sure, like, if there's a process or a way where they could seek legal counsel so they could get proper representation. They did seek help from somebody, but they were trying to charge them 30% of any gains, and it just didn't seem right. English is not their primary language, so I'm here in a way kind of trying to coach them through it. I'm a broker associate in real estate here, so I'm aware of their current situation and what they're going to be facing going into the market. So I think with the $1 million offer and the fact that even the cost to build the property like this now being over $321 a square foot to build a custom house puts their price point just to replace the current home that they have at $1 million, not including any of the hard cost improvements for landscaping, the guest house, and all those other things. So we're here to voice their concern and their opinion, and hopefully you all as well, some empathy as homeowners in this current state of the market, for them to get more time to find a suitable replacement property and an acceptable replacement property for themselves, and at the same time maybe get a little more clarification when it comes down to what other moving expenses or what other costs they're going to be absorbing, and maybe having somebody that could communicate with them in their language, or maybe giving them more time to seek proper representation so they could have somebody speak in their behalf.
And it's important to note that the resolutions of necessity, we're not talking about purchase price here. We're just beginning the actions necessary so that we can go to the next step. We definitely make sure everyone knows that we'll reimburse them up to $5,000 for their own appraisal, and we recommend that on every parcel. You know, the market is changing. You know, some of these appraisals we've done 6 months ago, a year ago, and the market's changed since then, and we recognize that. So what we're asking people to do is to get their own appraisals, and that becomes a basis of negotiation. And then our appraiser can look at that and respond. You know, so there are costs that we bear for relocation and for finding comparable housing. That's also part of it. But the RONs, you know, we don't sit here and negotiate in public. You know, it's one of those things where the RON is separate from the negotiating for the parcel, and we're going to work hard with every single one of the landowners out there to make sure that they're well educated and that they know what their rights are and you know, what they can do to get what they think is fair. But we need to.
Conversations we've had, though, is it in Spanish?
The documents that we're required to, the Caltrans documents on the eminent domain process, the appraisals do not belong to us, so we can't translate them for them. So that's Caltrans rules too. You know, we don't.
That always sounds good, but remember, these people were talking about taking their house. So in the negotiations that have occurred so far, has there been someone that speaks the language of the individuals when we approach them?
Yes, I believe so. I'll confirm for sure. I mean, that's OPC's job. They're supposed to be doing that for sure. We need to verify that, but I'm almost positive that they've got Spanish translation services while we're out there with our property agents.
Okay, so it sounds like, bottom line here, there's a long ways to go for this. We still have a long ways for this to happen, and a long ways before we get to a price. But there is going to be a back and forth between the county and the landowner, and hopefully work to a spot where everybody can. So this isn't like today. This happens. $1 million is the price, and that's it. That's not what's going to happen here today. So there's still a lot of work to go, a long ways to go, and we need to make sure that we have someone that speaks Spanish to be involved in this process, and Dave will verify that for sure. And yeah, we're not going to let this go south for you here. We'll figure out a way that we will.
I'd like to add a little more for him as well. I know that these negotiations happen maybe not as often as we see it, but one of the things that is certain is that we're on unprecedented times. When it comes down to our inventory, it's the lowest inventory we've seen in almost the history of our country. So when it comes down to that, we're asking for a bit more empathy when it comes down to slowing the process down for them, so that way they could find a place. They're not opposed to this project. They're 100% support of what the county's trying to do, but just as homeowners, I could see the frustration and the concern and the anxiety in them because they're going to be displaced, and they weren't looking to do that. But again, they're not They're not wanting to fight. They're just wanting a little more time so they could really figure out what the next step is for their family.
Okay.
Dave, when do you need possession of the property?
It's late spring 2023, so over a year from now.
Okay, so that's when you need possession, so that they don't, even if you come to a financial agreement, maybe a month before that or something along those lines, right? What about relocation assistance?
That's all part of the package, and that's separately negotiated or not negotiated. That one's straight up reimbursements,
Okay.
whatever their costs are.
Okay, so, and I completely understand, and this is a timeline, because again, we were briefed on this also, and we are super sensitive. Whenever you're taking someone's property, this is like the best and the worst power of government in some ways, but trying to get this done ahead of time so that there's enough time for folks to look and get your own appraisal, that's going to be the important part, because it will be indicative of the shortfall of housing. If you get an appraisal today, and if you get one a month from now, it probably changes again. I think that will be taken into account if they get an appraisal, but we don't come to an agreement for 6 months or a year, that appraisal could be out of whack. Of course, it could be out of whack either direction. And so both sides have some risk. But again, I think there's enough time with more or less a year or 11 months being the time frame. I think we're okay. But we have to start this process because it's a slow process. But we'll watch out.
And Artin can explain the time frame that we're talking about, if you like.
Yeah, Chairman Withrow and Board of Supervisors, I think it was very appropriate that we heard the presiding judge, from Stanislaus County here earlier talking about all the backlog of cases. One of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention is to reassure both this board as well as the homeowners is that this is merely a sort of a kickstart in the process. It provides the homeowner a forum in which to make a claim when, if this board were to adopt a resolution of necessity, then it would take us to that next step with that forum so that they can then continue to negotiate while also providing the county the ability to seek possession of the property, as Dave mentioned, by next spring. That process does take a very long time because of the backlog, which is the only reason why we're sort of starting this a bit earlier than we normally would. But again, as David Lehman mentioned, there are at least multiple avenues, both with respect to getting an appraisal of their own and continuing to negotiate with the county, as well as relocation benefits that are available through the state of California and federally regulated. So the county has been following those regulations and will continue to do so in providing relocation benefits and assistance, which can include purchase price differentials for residential purchases, et cetera. So to the extent that there's a unique property here that we're talking about, again, the county is obligated under law to work with them. And of course, my advice to the county would be that we will work with them.
Very good. Okay, so bottom line is you have our assurance that this will be a fair process, and that hopefully in the end, I appreciate that you guys are in support of the project and realize that we'll get to a spot that will work. I've been involved in a couple of these just down at the other end of the North County corridor when we did the Kernan interchange, expanded that. We took out a couple houses right in that area. Also on Highway 132, the new 132, we've had to deal with the same thing. So we will get to a point that is fair for everybody, and I don't want you guys to at all feel threatened like this is like this is going to be jammed down your throat. This is going to be a process, and it's going to be a fair process. I feel very confident in the people we have working here, and I'm glad you guys came down here today just to hear that and know that this will be a process that we will work through and get to a point where everybody's hopefully happy here.
Thank you, Chairman. Did you want to?
We just wait for more than a year, and sometimes we don't have no answers. And before I buy the property, nobody let me know that the property is going to be sold for the county. So I invest 7 years in the property because I invested because this is my retirement, and now they're going to take it from me, and it's not going to be fair. With $1 million, I can get a house, no property around. So that's it.
We totally understand and we hear you, and we're going to work this out. We'll work it out for you. I can promise you guys we'll work through this.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for coming down. Thank you.
Dave, that process goes on all the way to spring of '23, that negotiation process?
Yes, right till the end. We don't ever want to go to court and have a trial for this, but I've been told we would negotiate even on the court steps. You know, we're continually talking and trying to get a negotiated settlement.
Yeah, so that'll take us past when we looking for possession. And I think one of the things we want to make sure we talk about are all of the services that are made available to property owners through relocation assistance. So there's actually assistance in finding the property. They're not, property owners aren't left on their own, hey, go find a piece of property. That's not what happens. We provide them with assistance in locating property, give them lists of properties that they should go out and look at for relocation. And then once a property is located, we also give them assistance in actually moving and purchasing the property. So there's a lot of process there, a lot of services given to property owners, and throughout the litigation process, we're always looking for an opportunity to come to agreement on the sales price. And so that's what David was talking about on the courthouse steps. If we can find a meeting of the minds, then that's what we're looking for.
One more thing in regards to their concern as well as, and thank you for bringing that up, council member as well. Financing is a big deal as well. In a market like this, and you present an offer to another homeowner, put yourself in that situation that is contingent on negotiating a sale with the county, in which the price you don't agree with right now, but you're very hopeful that they're gonna have some kind of consideration on your situation. It's almost impossible right now to negotiate a sale like that, right? So I think having the communication between the financing, them, and giving them the strength to go out there and actually go shopping for a property, right, to find a resolution. So I think that's where a lot of the confusion and the disconnect is for them. They just don't even know where to start. Where do we go, right? So, thank you.
Thanks, Daniel.
One other issue I'll bring up to the Board of Supervisors is that, not necessarily an issue, but a positive perhaps, that once this process is kicked off and if and when the Board of Supervisors adopts the resolution of necessity, we as in the county is obligated to then deposit the entire sum for the value of the property with the state treasurer's office. It's almost like an escrow account. The homeowner then has the ability to withdraw that minus any mortgages that may be or liens that may be pending on the house, to withdraw that amount and then go out there in the market and continue to look for a replacement property while we try to reach a final resolution of what the fair market value of this particular property is. So if that provides any comfort to anyone, including the homeowner, I wanted to put that out there. But going back to this particular adoption of this resolution of necessity, there's the 4 findings that this board has to make, and I think we need to focus on those four findings and make sure that the board is aware of those findings and considers everything in light of those findings that need to be made.
Okay. Okay, so any other comments on this property? Come on up.
I think that might be the lose.
Oh, is that the next?
I think so. That's
Is that the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, let's.
I think it's number 6.
Okay, I think, if you could hold on one second, we'll come to yours. Okay. If we could, I'm sorry. Because I think now that as I rethink this, we really should go through each one of these.
Right.
Have a vote and then move on to the next one. Okay. Okay. So if there's any other comments on this property? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board and we will look for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? I'm sorry.
I just want to comment again because I think the last part, what you had just said is the most important part for these folks. The understanding that the money is available. So I want to make sure that gets conveyed. That's not just paperwork from Caltrans. That we got to have some sort of concierge service because I know how people get. I would be in the same position as this gentleman over here. So anyways, okay, I'm sorry.
All right, very good. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, and we will work with you. We promise you that. Okay, let's move on to our next item, item 7-4.
This is for APN 083-002-038, Gilbert W. And here's what, this is really close to the interchange, future interchange of Roselle and new North County Corridor, and you can see that the entire parcel is needed for the project. So again, it's the same recommendations, different parcel, find the subject property APN 083-002-038, described in the attached resolution is necessary for the project, and everything else is the same.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Dave on this one before we? Anybody from the public on this property?
Hi, I'm Connie Gilbert.
Connie, nice to see you. Thanks for coming down.
Well, I don't know if it is. We've been through this whole process. You know, like your council member here stated that, you know, we want to get through this whole process quickly as possible. I'm sure we all do. But, you know, in the end, I have a home that you guys are wanting to take. Again, I'm going to piggyback on what this gentleman said. We're not here, or I'm not here to stop any of those things. But as far as the county, the whole process, communication's been extremely poor. No one's really contacted us other than, here's some paperwork, you can read it. We've done our homework. We've educated ourselves. We are educated people that live in that home. Again, we have a custom home, three-story home. We've been looking ever since we got our paperwork. There is nowhere that we can go out to look for a home, and believe me, we've been trying to say, hey, this is your measly offer that we're going to give you. Try to go find a home. Not happening because, first of all, what they took their numbers from is from Oakdale. We didn't live in Oakdale. I know there's houses out there that they try to compare it to. At this time and point, and when they said that they did their appraisal, fair market, it's 3 years old. There's nothing fair about this whole process. You know, I'm going to piggyback exactly what they said. We talked to several attorneys. I don't want to go through that process. I'm sure none of you that would get displaced would want to at 40%. That's a lot of money for the little change they want to give us to go out to try to purchase something. It's crazy. It's ludicrous. You know, but yet I know you guys are here wanting to take the home. We understand eminent domain. We understand how everything works, but there's two lands or 10-acre parcel. We have the 1 acre and the other's in trust. My husband's the executor of that estate that you guys are taking. Fine, we're okay with that. But make it fair. Make it to where we can go purchase something. We've been trying for over a year now to look for things, a home to go purchase. They kind of laugh at us and say, what are you trying to do here if you don't even have the money? You haven't even settled on anything. How can we? But yet, we're here today so that you guys can say, okay, we're going to sign off, we're going to take your house, and you got to figure it out. There has been no transparency. There has been no one talking to us other than, here's this offer. Oh, you know what? We know you're not satisfied with this offer, so we're going to give you $200,000 more. Still not going to get us anything. And then we're limited as to the area that we can go in, but by law, you guys can't limit us on that. We've done our homework, we've done our research, and if it means we got to fight, then we're going to fight.
So Connie, I'm going to tell you the same thing that we told the other landowners. I assure you that we'll work through this process and we'll get to an equitable solution for you. And if we need to, we will increase the communication if we need to. Obviously, we'll do that also and make sure that you guys are constantly in the loop of what's going on, and we'll know what you're doing and you'll know what we're doing, and we'll work through this process. So
I truly do hope you guys will, because communication has not happened, and I'm a communications major. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Okay, any other comments with regard to this property? We're going to get to yours, I'm sorry. Unless you want to talk about this one too. Okay, all right, we'll come to yours in just a second. Okay, seeing no other comments, I will bring it back to the board here and we'll look for a motion.
So I have the same comments
Okay.
again as the last one, but I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we will move on now to our next property, item 7.5.
And this is the house that Connie was referring to. This is the 1 acre piece in the house. It's APN 083-002-037. There were two appraisals, one for the open land, the 10 acres, and then a separate appraisal for the house. And here's the, we've seen this with the other one. It's a complete take. We need the whole property. The only recommendation that's different is number 3, find that the subject property, APN 083-002-037, described in the attached resolution is necessary for the project. The other recommendations remain the same.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dave. And so again, just to reinforce, Connie, that we're going to work through this. We're going to make this work for everybody. We'll figure this out. Okay, any other questions or comments on this one?
Mr. Chairman, Dave, just going back to the RON, that we have to do the RON before that escrow account gets set up.
That's correct.
It's part of the process here, but we'll, yeah. Okay. All right, very good. All right, we'll look for a motion on this one then.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Pass unanimously. Okay, let's move on to item 6, and we'll get you up here in just a second here.
All right. This is the parcel. It's APN 075-025-019, the Lou parcel. And as you can see, again, it's a full take. We need the whole property for the construction, mostly on the northern part, the part up on top, or mostly in the middle. That's Clarabelle Road. Local Clarabelle Road realignment goes right through the property, and then there's fill slopes throughout the property, the rest of it.
Okay. Okay, good. Thanks, Dave. Okay,
All right.
Mr. Liu, you can come on up. How are you?
Very good, sir. Okay, thank you, Mr. Lim. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thank you to Mr. Chairman and the Board Supervisor. Yeah. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ken Lu. I born in January 1946, and I the Vietnam veteran. 1964, I served the United States in the MACV, the military assistant commanding office, and I'm a secret intelligence for the United States. And I go to combat. I have no distance with the enemy. My enemy is next to me right here until 1975, and the United States pulled out of Vietnam. I the one offered to stay back in Vietnam to serve for 2,000-3,000 missing in action. In 1976, I got captured in Vietnam. In 77, I skipped into the jungle. In 78, I skipped to the country into Indonesia. And I come from there, I meet U.S. office to let me come back to Fairfield, United States, Fairfield Airport Base, Chavez Air Force. And from there, I weigh only 90 pounds. But in 2-3 years, I in hospital, and I come in and out, and I walk just like that, because my stomach cut about like that long. Okay, I injury, all kind of different injury. And 5 years in our hospital, I deny disability. I want to go to work. $3.15 per hour, 40-some years ago. Okay? You know why? Because when I joined the service, President John Kennedy told me, don't ask what this country gives to you. You ask yourself what you give to this country. We adapt you to this country, United States of America. Go fight nation communist. Get better education for next generation. I graduated out in high school in 4 different languages: Chinese, Vietnamese, French, and English. And I know 7-8 dialects in China. So I select to be special force. That's why my English is half bucket. Everything is a half bucket. I have nothing full. I come back, I work. My wife, they are Phong Lu. And we work. We earn the money. We buy this home. It's a dream home. 3611 Clarabelle. That means Clarabelle and Terminal. That's where the accident is a lot. And the mother and the 2 kids died right in the corner of my house. Okay. But for this project, I really support, because I see so many accidents in there. I pulled the girl, 18-year-old, my son and I pulled her out in the car, only 20 feet above my living room. Well, I come here today. I know I discussed with Mr. Lehman and Mr. Rosen. I know your county will help me. I ask, come here, I ask for help. I accept to move. I accept to get out. I support the project. But the one thing is, move me from different poverty, give me different poverty, I go. I'm 76 years old, retired with fixed income. My wife too, retired. And the other kid, it's all grow up. I have 2 kids in the service. One in the Marine Corps, and the other one in the Navy. The Marine Corps is the one got wounded in Iraq and come back. He's 16 years in embassy duty, and he injured. He go back, go to school. No tech disability, go work for the Caltrain in Sacramento. Next daughter go work in San Francisco. And the third daughter, she grew up in Oakdale and go to school in Waybank, and now is a commander for Navy Aviation. And the younger son is to live with me, but I happy because after the POW, you know how people get beat up really bad. But that don't hurt me because mentally I control myself. I know what this is for. I earned 2 medals. One from William Westmoreland, the general. He said, can do. He said, then Mr. Bob Hope, he come in, he said, what I can do without you. Can do what I do without you. He said, man can. Well, today I come here, I ask because the market, the home is horrible. You go there, you look 2 days later, they already sold. I asked the county and Mr. Lehman, Mr. Rosen, everybody help me to get the home. Wherever I want to go back to Elk Grove in Sacramento, and if you can find me the place, I go. Have no problem. But the one thing is, I have no money, it's a big income. well, I really tired, I will retire. I want to do in the garden, do a little bit like that for all my life. Right? That's why I come here. I ask for. I happy there's a program. I like our country, superpower, super rich country, you know. I have no problem with that, okay? We do have super problem, but we have a super correction, right? So that's why I come. We can talk. Mr. Raymond very good, Mr. Rose is very good. He tried to help me out. But I come here, I want to say thanks. Thank you to everyone to help me to get out. Okay.
So, Mr. Liu, first, it's an honor to have you here before us, and we so much appreciate all you've done for this country.
Yeah.
So we're just to start with that, how honored we are to have you to be here.
Yeah.
And thank you for all you've done and all your service for our country, and your children continue to do for this country. So then I will just reinforce the same thing that we're saying to everybody here. We're going to make sure that this works out and is fair for everyone. So when it's all said and done, we're hoping we'll have everybody in a spot that they're happy with, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that this ends up being a fair and equitable deal. But again, I can't say enough of how much thanks we have and how honored we have to have you here before us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will
Thank you
work
very
on
much.
this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your...
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lim. Thank you, Mr. Mosen. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, and we will
Thank
talk
you.
some more.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
For the Lewis, we are direct billing the appraisal. So Dave Cogdell's doing his independent appraisal, and Dave's billing the county. So there's no direct cost for that. We can do that. So, and we did meet with the Lewis. Just want to make sure that everyone knows, I try not to be hard to find, and the Gutierrez's and the Gilberts, so we'd be more than glad to meet you out on your site, meet in our conference room. Let's talk and talk and talk some more. So that's what we do. This is the most public outreach part of a project, is when you're out, because we understand we're buying your castle, your home. It's a big deal.
Very good. All right, thanks. You know, we can't.
Can you translate for us?
Yeah, let's do it. We're going to do translation here really quick. Yeah, if you'd like to come up and speak, have her come up and
She
speak.
doesn't understand.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. It's okay, take your time and just, we have a translator, it's going to help you, so yeah.
Su tiempo.
Sí, pero tengo 23 años en Estados Unidos.
I have lived in the United States for 23 years.
Yo no trabajo.
I don't work.
Mi esposo trabaja.
My husband is who works.
Tengo 3 hijos.
We have 3 children.
Una hija está estudiando medicina.
Our daughter is going to school to study medicine.
No pagamos nada porque Estados Unidos nos da todo para su educación.
We don't pay anything for that. The state covers for her to go to school.
Tengo un hijo con autismo.
We have a son that has autism.
Compramos esa casa para él.
We bought this home for him.
Tengo una casa al otro lado.
We have a home on the side.
Porque es para él.
Because that's for him.
Yo lo voy a ver.
I go to see him.
Pero no va a estar en la casa. Me quieren quitar lo que mi esposo trabaja.
They want to take what my husband has worked for.
Nos dan $1,000,000. No puedo comprar lo mismo.
I cannot give
Nadie
something
nos
similar with what
escucha.
they're giving us. Nobody is listening to us.
Nos ven como tontos. Es
They think we're
nuestra
dumb.
casa.
This is our house.
Yo puse piedras con mis hijos. Yo puse árboles con mis hijos.
We put I planted the trees with my children. We put the rocks that are
Necesito algo
there.
igual.
We need
Porque,
something similar
porque no puedo otra cosa.
because I can't anything else.
Ayúdenos, por favor.
Please help us.
Ellos
Ellos nos ven la cara de tontos.
They're wanting
No nos
to,
escuchan.
they're not listening to us. They think we're
Solamente
dumb.
nos enseñan y quieren y todo.
All they're showing is
No nos
papers.
dice nada.
They're not saying
Pues no, el
anything.
único que podemos dar. Que
This
hagan-
is all we can
que hagan
give
o-
you.
Que vengan a revisar otra vez tu casa. Pues
They
claro,
can
nos van
come
a dar
and
otro
see your home
millón.
again.
No nos van a dar para comprar algo nuevo, algo como tenemos.
They're
Yo no
not
pido
giving
nada
us,
más.
we don't want anything but something similar to what we have now.
I think one of the most important things she said is that they don't need somebody to talk with them, they need somebody to walk with them through the process. And I think that's an echo of everybody here, is the conversations are one thing, it's the action in this market. And there's nobody else in this county more qualified to speak on the real estate market than I am. I've been ranked the number 4th largest and highest producing team in the state of California. For the last 12 years, I've been the number 1 agent in this county. And I see it every day. We help 500 families a year relocate. This has to go past conversations. This has to go to a walk side by side with these families because they're all struggling through something big. And it's past taking their property. It's about the market. It's about the emotions that they have behind the move. And they just need somebody to walk with them.
Okay.
Gracias.
He will.
Y disculpe.
Thank you, and I apologize.
That's okay. No, thank you. Okay, so we hear loud and clear.
Right. You know, and we'll be glad to do the same thing. You know, they can, everyone, we strongly encourage people to get their own independent appraisals. If it makes more sense and they want us to, we can contract directly with the appraiser they choose. It's clear to me now, we need to be, there's a fine line that we walk, right? As a public agency, we don't want to control their process, but it is apparent they need they need more help. And so we can do that. That's not a problem. We just don't want to have our hand on their tiller, so to speak. You know, so, but we'd be glad to assist them further.
Very good. We'll work with you. Okay. Okay, well, we've said we will do that. We will, from this point forward, we will increase our communication with you. We said we'll walk with you. We'll do everything we need to do.
I'll make sure everybody has my business card. It's got my work cell on it. You can give me a call, text me. You know, I'm available almost all hours.
I'm sorry, did you want to come up?
I just say one small
Come up to the
thing.
microphone. I'm sorry. It's okay.
I just say one small thing. Nobody thought in this project because the price go up so fast. Even the county try to help, but still cannot go so fast. The price, $1 million. Who have the money? My retirement only 900. Who have the money to buy $1 million house? No way. They help us, but no way can you get the $1 million house.
It's okay.
You look at the market. Even today, it posts on, they sold tomorrow. We want to help the project, we want to move. No way to get out.
Well, we will work through this. We will work with you, and we'll figure this
I just
out.
say one small thing, no way to get out. So where our future? We don't know where our future to go. We worry, cry.
That's okay. No, we share your concerns, and we're going to make sure that this works out. I guarantee you, we'll make sure
We
that
have
this...
small income. The house all paid. We have nothing to pay now. We have small income. But in front of us, it's $1 million. Can't do it.
Okay, we will make sure that this works for you. Thank you.
But we still thank you for county and your guy because so far I sit here, you are so nice. This is the first time I come here. I never been in here, but your guy so nice. I surprised. I will tell my kids because my kids worry for me too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for, okay. So we got a lot of work to do here, and we very much appreciate all of you who've come here and spoke today, and we will continue to work very hard to come to an equitable solution for everybody. So thank you, guys. Okay. So then on this last one, we will look for a motion.
Motion to approve staff recommendations.
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passed unanimously. Okay, thank you very much. A lot of work to do, guys, but we'll get there. And we'll hear back from you if you feel like we're not doing that, okay? Well, thank you. Thank you all very much. Thanks, Dave. Thank you, guys.
Yes, right now.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to item 7 here, which is approval to adopt Stanislaus County groundwater well siting and construction guidelines and to adopt an addendum to the program environmental impact report. Rob, thanks for hanging out and waiting for us here. And Mike, good to see you too.
Well, good morning, Honorable Board, Chairman Withrow, CEO Hayes, Council Bose, and the constituents of Stanislaus County. The item before your board this morning is for the approval and adoption of well siting construction guidelines for the Stanislaus County Well Ordinance 9.36. Secondly, adopt an addendum to a Certified Program Environmental Impact Report, or PEIR, pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, Guideline Sections 15164 for discretionary well permitting and management, which was adopted locally in 2018. And thirdly, direct the Department of Environmental Resources to file a notice of determination with the Stanislaus County Clerk Recorder's Office pursuant to Public Resources Code Section 21152 and CEQA Guidelines Sections 15094. Well permitting throughout the state of California has been delegated to the local enforcement agency, and in most cases, that responsibility falls under the Environmental Health Division. The state has provided well standards titled Bulletin 7490. These standards outline the requirements for the wells that are allowed to be constructed and developed in the state of California. However, in Bulletin 7490, there is language that allows the regulator to use professional judgment or discretion during the approval process. It is this discretion that has become a point of litigation in Stanislaus County. The County of Stanislaus well permitting practices were challenged in court, and it was determined that the practice of using discretion was unlawful and violated CEQA. Thus, a new program of evaluating wells needed to be developed. This new process needed to allow staff to easily identify when a proposed well met the definition of discretion, which follows a court ruling and abides by the CEQA process. To my left is our consultant and hydrogeologist, Mike Tita from Formation Environmental. And from here, I'm going to let him take over.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Withrow. Thank you, Supervisors. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the guidelines and the background around their development. Just by way of background, I'm a certified hydrogeologist in the state of California and certified engineering geologist, and I've been involved with Stanislaus County assisting discretionary well permitting and groundwater sustainability issues since about 2014. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to the topic and provide the background and approach to the new guidelines, and then provide an overview of those guidelines and of the CEQA analysis in the proposed CEQA addendum. And then I'll turn it back over to Rob for the staff recommendations. So by way of background, Rob mentioned the state well standard. Department of Water Resources was tasked by the state legislature to develop statewide well construction standards for the protection of water quality. And that was initially issued around 1974 and then updated in 1981 and again in 1990. And it provides minimum standards that are applicable statewide, and the DWR allowed local jurisdictions to adopt those standards or to develop standards of their own that at a minimum met the water quality protection levels of those standards or exceeded them. So the County Well Ordinance, Chapter 9.36 of the County Code, was developed to protect groundwater quality and specified the state well standards as the standards that the county would adopt. But as I mentioned, the county has the option of defining guidelines that incorporate more stringent local standards under those guidelines. The next point that I'd like to get to is the groundwater ordinance. That's the companion to the well ordinance. It's Chapter 9.37 of the county code. And it protects groundwater quantity and assures sustainable groundwater management. And the reason that I mention that is because it's important to note that that has been enforced and will continue to be enforced to protect sustainable groundwater management within the county as these new guidelines are implemented. The next two terms are ministerial permits and discretionary permits, with ministerial permits being those that require little or no judgment or deliberation and can be issued essentially over the counter. Discretionary permits, on the other hand, require discretion and review, judgment or deliberation to determine either whether they should be issued or the manner in which they should be issued, the conditions attached to those permits. And discretionary permits, the decision to issue those will trigger the requirement for an environmental review under CEQA. So just a brief problem statement. Stanislaus County was the subject of a lawsuit back in about 2013, thereabouts, where a couple of large well permits were issued, and it was alleged that they should have been evaluated under CEQA. That lawsuit wound its way all the way up to the state Supreme Court because of some conflicting findings in the Court of Appeals, and then was remanded back down to the local courts, the appeals court and the trial court. And the key outcome there is, as Rob mentioned, that the practice of issuing non-variance well permits on a ministerial basis is unlawful. So as most of the counties in California did up to that time, Stanislaus County would issue well permits if they complied with the state well standards on a ministerial basis. And what the court found specifically is that those well standards required discretion to implement them in at least some cases. And therefore, in some cases, CEQA would be triggered. And that's why it found the practice of issuing all those permits unlawful. So the court didn't provide absolute guidance. They did provide some guidance. They basically said that the permits can be issued on a ministerial basis unless they can't be. So that's why it's important to define when that discretion is triggered. And the areas of potential discretion that they found in the state well standards were what were called separation distances. Those are separation distances of the well from a potential source of pollutant like a tank or a septic tank, a contamination site, sewage lagoon, those kinds of things. Gradient considerations. Gradient is essentially the groundwater flow direction. Is the well located downstream, sideways, or upstream from a potential pollution source? Locations in floodplains, with the concern being that if a well gets flooded, that surface water that is contaminated could make its way down into the well. And then well seal depths. Well seal depths are essentially the backfill that goes between the well pipe and the boring, and it keeps water from moving either between aquifers or from the surface down the well hole. So what this resulted in is, over about the last 6 months, until it could be determined which permits would be discretionary and which would be ministerial, the well permitting process has slowed, and stalled for at least some well applications. And this is all happening while there's a state of drought emergency, which is leading to the need for new wells for people's groundwater demands, for people's water demands to be met. Another piece of background, as I mentioned, well, actually I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but the state is in the process of changing the state well standards in part as a response to this lawsuit. And the revised well standards are expected to be available in about a year. But action is needed more immediately. So that's the purpose of these guidelines, is to provide an interim solution an interim definition to the process that will allow the well permitting process in the county to work now. So the objective, if you see under the current condition, on the right-hand side, we see that permits for non-exempt wells under the groundwater ordinance are considered subject to CEQA and processed under a program environmental impact report. As I mentioned, that will continue unchanged. And primarily the process there is that if a well is found to be sustainable by a groundwater sustainability agency, then that permit can be issued ministerially. If a groundwater sustainability agency finds that a well may not be sustainable or they're not able to determine that, then there's a discretionary review that takes place. That will continue unchanged. On the left-hand side, in blue, you see the well ordinance, and that's where permits were issued under the county well ordinance and were presumed to be ministerial, but the court found that to be unlawful. So the change that's needed here is that we have to define the dividing line between what permits are discretionary, where must discretion be applied in order to protect groundwater quality, and where can we determine that permits can be issued without that discretion. And in order to get to that place, we need to clearly define setback distances and seal depths and other well construction standards that can apply throughout the whole county. And then those permits can continue to be issued on a ministerial basis, whereas the other ones are flagged for special review because that's an appropriate approach. Let me stop quickly by saying that our approach here is to develop implementation guidelines based on data that we have at hand. With more data and more time, such as at the time when the state well standards are updated, we'll be able to define standards that are maybe less restrictive, less conservative. But the approach at this point has to be to err on the side of conservatism, to quickly identify those permits that really must be subject to discretion. So the implementation guidelines look at separation distances, seal depths, construction standards, and special management areas. Groundwater conditions aren't the same throughout the county, so we've identified special management areas where various specific requirements would apply. We've also developed an application review checklist and flow chart that allows that application process to proceed along decision points that are clearly defined as yes/no decision points. In other words, discretion is not required in order to complete this work. We've documented the basis for developing these various different standards, and we've done that by looking at precedents in other jurisdictions and other references from trade groups and other studies that have been done, and we've documented the rationale for selecting the standards. And then for compliance with CEQA, we've prepared an addendum to the Program Environmental Impact Report that was adopted by the county in 2018 for this discretionary well permitting process by identifying the additional wells that would be subject to discretion and the effects of adopting these guidelines that define those discretionary wells. So this allows us to leverage the Program Environmental Impact Report that exists in the county. The guidelines, I mentioned separation distances. They follow adopted county standards from the local agency management plan that was prepared for on-site wastewater treatment systems, basically septic systems. And this program includes required setback distances applicable in different parts of the county. That's very similar to the management zones that we would use for this because it's based on hydrogeologic and soil conditions. The important thing about this plan is that it responds to local, it identifies local conditions that require special management, and it was approved by the state Regional Water Quality Control Board, which is the agency that's responsible for protecting groundwater quality in the area. We also looked at conservative precedents that are applicable to our local conditions, so other well ordinances and standards, and as I mentioned, publications from trade groups. We did that within California as well as some locations outside of California. And then lastly, we looked at the state wellhead protection standards. There are state guidelines that were developed for public supply wells to protect water quality. And they include, very specifically, a methodology for evaluating setback distances that are appropriate that don't have to consider whether or not a well is located upstream, downstream, or sideways from a potential pollution source. So they're a little bit more conservative, but therefore also a little bit more broadly applicable. And then lastly, well, we looked at seal depths. So we looked at the minimum seal depths. We increased that minimum depth from 50 feet for potable supply wells and 20 feet for agricultural wells to 80 feet. Because that is a standard that will apply more broadly across the county and that we can be assured is protective while we implement this work and determine through practice and closer analysis whether that 80 feet can be scaled back. But we're confident that the 80 feet will provide protection across the county. We identified special management zones based on the aquifer conditions, the groundwater and soil conditions, so the hydrogeology, as well as special management zones based on information about water quality and various different contaminants that the state has information about within our county. And then lastly, we looked at minimum protective construction standards that could be applied in flood zones to prevent potential incursion of surface water. The checklist basically goes through all of those items sequentially, as I said, in a yes-no format. And I'm going to go straight to this flow chart, which you can see. You start out in the upper left-hand corner, and you see are the setback distances. Do they follow the guidelines? Yes, no. And then there's various different questions about whether or not you're located in different management zones and whether or not you follow the application follows the appropriate standards for those. Any no answer on those or a yes answer in one particular sensitive category with respect to contamination would put an applicant over into this blue middle column, which is subject to CEQA. And the first determination there is whether or not the well permit is categorically exempt from environmental review under CEQA. So, for example, a monitoring well or an emergency well replacement may be exempt from that. It wouldn't be exempt from following standards, wouldn't be exempt from working with DER staff to provide the appropriate level of protection for the wells, but it would be exempt from having to produce and circulate an environmental document under CEQA. And then finally, if it's not categorically exempt, then it goes into the right-hand column, which goes through the CEQA process, and the CEQA document there, whether it's an initial study negative declaration, mitigated negative declaration, or EIR, would take at a minimum 6 months to a year to prepare. CEQA document for this action that was selected was an addendum to the 2018 PEIR, or Program Environmental Impact Report, for the discretionary well permitting program. The PEIR addendum analyzes the impacts of the guidelines that are being adopted under Chapter 9.36. And we've determined that this is a minor change, so the addendum does not require public review. The project description for the guideline implementation is that what the project is doing, what the action of adopting these guidelines is doing, is it is pursuant to what the court has asked. It is defining that line between discretionary and ministerial permits. So it's identifying a subset of permits that will be subject to additional environmental review. And in order to do that, it is adopting a more stringent, more conservative, well-designed standard for all wells. So the net effect on both counts is improved protection for the environment. And therefore, we conclude that there are no impacts associated, no environmental impacts associated with adopting these guidelines. So the next steps, if the guidelines and the PEIR addendum are approved by the Board of Supervisors, is to continue to engage and inform the regulatory community. We've already engaged with drillers to get their input. We would be engaging with the regulatory community to get their input and make sure that they understand and get assistance in being able to submit well permit applications effectively and easily. We're in the process of developing tools and technical analyses to further improve and streamline the well permitting process. So we're in the process right now of working on a simplified water quality data mapping toolkit that's a simple Google Earth overlay, and that's something that, that most people can easily implement as opposed to having to go to various different state websites to get the data. We're proposing to put together a checklist for categorical exemptions, so that determination, if a well permit requires discretion, being able to determine if it's categorically exempt would be a simple one-page process. And then we are discussing working on a policy white paper regarding the potential water quality and supply benefits of using shallow nitrate-impacted groundwater for irrigation. That came up in the context of whether or not the presence of shallow nitrate impacts in agricultural areas should trigger discretion in issuing well permits. We determined that it is easy to protect water quality. It's straightforward to protect water quality for such wells, and that in fact pumping such wells and using the water for irrigation can provide both irrigation as well as long-term water quality benefits, because the nitrate that's in the groundwater helps to meet some of the crop nitrogen demand, nutrient demand. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Rob.
Well, it's staff's recommendation that that your board adopt the Stanislaus County groundwater well siting and construction guidelines, adopt the addendum to the Program Environmental Impact Report Discretionary Well Permitting and Management Program, and direct the Department of Environmental Resources to file a notice of determination with the Stanislaus County Clerk's Recorder's Office.
Very good. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Mike. Okay. Any questions from the board? No questions. Okay. All right. We do have one comment card here. We'll start with this, and then anybody else that would like to speak on this will come up afterwards. Mark Stone. Mark, good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, plugging along.
Good.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Been sitting here for about 3 hours now, so I hope you would extend the courtesy to me if I go a little long to be able to finish. I'm not up here to rant and rave. I'm up here to express some concerns about how this came about, ask some questions, and maybe educate, because I'm not sure you, as supervisors, fully understand the overall ramifications of some of the setback requirements here and what are out there. How we got here, we all know. There's nothing we can do about that. Onto it. But I am a face of the crisis. I am a direct product and result of a broken system in this county that went on there with ramifications that affect me and my family, and I would be safe to say thousands of other residents of this county, based on what you can just simply look at by applying these standards to other households in this county. And I have some numbers that I will give you that I was able to put together real quickly off of Google Earth. Nothing more, that affects 3 different supervisors' districts. They're all continuous to each other as they come across on a very narrow band that will show the ramifications. How I got here was my well and my pump sits at about 60 feet on it. I'm not out of water. I've got water there like I have had since we bought the house in 1976. Our groundwater has always hung in that 60-foot range there. It was a little bit higher because my original jet pump was set at 50 feet. When I put in a submersible, it dropped to 60. I live in an area that on soil maps is referred to as the dunes, out north of Kernan, between there. What I basically live in is a giant swimming pool filter, is what it comes down to. My current well sits 50 feet or maybe a little less away from my septic system out there, as do most other neighbors out there that have into it. My property is 75 feet wide and 300 foot deep on it. We do not die out there. Remember, we've got third, fourth, and fifth generation family members living on St. Francis out there. My in-laws' house, built in 1918, 1919, somewhere along that line, their well set less than 20 feet away from their septic tank, which at that time was an old redwood septic tank. Nobody in that household died from the environmental cancers that they bring up in California's groundwater standard. What we do die from out there is old age, 93, 95, up to 100 years of age. The ones that have died of cancer out there have all been heavy smokers onto it as we come down to it. So getting back to my property, this proposal gives me a very slim ray of hope that I will be able to relocate my well. About 2 months ago, I started getting water out of the well that was basically iced tea colored. It's because my casing is failing. Remember, the well was installed in 1949. Makes that water unusable. Cleared up in a couple days. Here, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, it happened again. And it took us 3 days to clear our water, where we could have usable water to be able to wash dishes, shower in, and everything. In the meantime, we showered in our fifth wheel that was out back until it cleared up. I called 5 different well drillers and put in a request for them, and eventually they all got back to me, and they said, hey, you know, here's the bad news. We probably aren't going to be able to relocate a well on your property because of setback requirements that came up out of there. And 2 of them just flat out said, we realize this is unethical, but the thing I would recommend would be get a well driller to certify your well and sell it to somebody else and cut and run, and then it's their problem. That is not...
It's okay, keep going.
That is not going to be a solution out here for it. So going with the 100-foot, I'm a 300-foot deep property back there. Going with the 100-foot, I am going to have to put a well in my front yard. I have got a 15-foot, out of 300 deep property, I have got a 15-foot wide space I can seek a well between my house, an irrigation pipeline, and the city's right, or the county's road right away out front on it. My property is developed and landscaped about half. The back half of that property is all open, and I could put a well out there, which I would have been able to do, but I cannot from where my septic tank and leach field areas. I can get 100 foot, but I cannot get 100 feet away from my neighbor's well or septic field in the back. So I have to go to the front. And the problem that this came about is another neighbor down the street who has a smaller property wanted to put a well in and build on a small lot. The county told him he could not put his well in because he could not get the separation from the septic systems. He would also not be able to put a septic system in because that would endanger the wells of the people on each side. So we've established that the county recognizes putting a septic system in can pollute or ruin somebody else's well or where they can put a well. At the same time, directly behind me, another person who I will simply term as a mover and shaker, being an old guy in this county, moved a modular home in without a permit, started setting it up, and when the county finally came on to him, he puts his pump at the far end of this little triangle-shaped property, puts a septic system in. They approved it all the way up to my alley. When that came up to the alley behind us, that totally cut off me and two other neighbors from ever being able to relocate our wells. Houses in this neighborhood have already relocated the wells to that back property to be able to get the separation, and everybody kind of agreed what that was in it. So here's the county on one end refusing one person, but letting somebody else come up and put that well in. The thing that concerns me the most is I am hearing about this for the first time from well drillers, two of them from Tuolumne County. There is no way I can find out any of this information on it. There's an ad hoc committee in this county, but be able to find this. I have to hear from people who live in Tuolumne County, number one, that this is on the board meeting even today. When I called my supervisor's office to try to get some information on it, the lady there said, I don't know anything about it, and how do you even know it's going to be on the agenda? We haven't seen the agenda yet. And I think this was back on Tuesday, I believe, or Wednesday. And I told her it's because I heard about this from 5 well drillers that I contacted, including 2 out of Tuolumne County. And so she's going to get back to me on it. She told Manny about it, and he called me, I believe it was Friday. And after it actually, when the board agenda finally posted on Friday, I found out about it. And it took him that long to get read into it so he could come back and talk to me. I originally thought that he was blowing me off onto it. But it took him to get educated on it so he could talk to me onto it. So that's why I'm here today. But when you look at this, I live in the Myers Tract, and when you look at this, you have to look at what comes. I did a very small sliver on Google Earth going from Carver Road to Oakdale Road. It includes St. Francis, the Chenault area, and the Amy Crawford area across there. In the Myers Tract where I live, there's 41 residences, 3 vacant lots. And of those residences, 19 of them are about a quarter acre onto it. In the Chenault area, there's 48 residences, 2 vacant lots, and 3 of those are on that quarter acre size. In the Amy Crawford area, the ones I looked at, there's 29 residences, and 24 of them are on that quarter acre sized lots. I can drill my well, but because we can't get the setbacks on it, this ordinance or whatever it is basically condemns those properties because you could never live in that house because you cannot relocate a well, you cannot sell it because you can't put a well on it. So that's 118 properties. Of those 118 properties, 76 of them would be condemned underneath this resolution or whatever it happens to be here, because you would never, ever be able to relocate a well onto it. So all these people that invested their lives, I plan on dying where I live. It's my kids that are going to benefit by that there, as we all do out there. But my property, if it hadn't been for this 15-foot wide sliver across the front of my property, I would not be able to relocate a well. Part of the problem is the departments that don't talk to each other in the county. But you look at that, now multiply that countywide, and can you see the ramification that you're going to have out there?
Mark, I'm going to let maybe Rob or Mike, if they have any response or comments with regard to your concerns. And then we've got other people here sorry, they've been waiting that might want to speak too.
Okay.
Yeah, but we hear what you're saying, and let's see what if there's anything we can do.
Yeah, let me just maybe offer a couple of things for perspective, and then I'll turn it over to Rob. First, I think it's important to know a couple of things about these guidelines. One is they are intended to be interim. The second is that they are guidelines, and variances are permitted. But if there's a variance, then a health sanitarian needs to look at the proposal and work with the applicant to make sure that water quality and public health are protected. So I'll let Rob speak to the process of doing that. The difficulty of locating septic systems and wells on smaller properties was something that we discussed as this was being developed, and we discussed with the drillers, and I'm no stranger to it myself. I have a septic tank and a well on the same property, and I know that you have limited options, especially once you start considering your neighbors. What we did ultimately was we adopted a program that we knew would not fit all sizes, but would allow the county to be able to issue permits ministerially as opposed to having all permits be discretionary. For a residential well, if a permit winds up being discretionary, it's easier for them to qualify for one of the categorical exemptions, either under what's called the common sense exemption, if they work with a sanitarian to provide a well location and seal depth that provides adequate protection, an emergency situation, which is also exempt, and then lastly, the State Water Resources Control Board and the DWR have generally found that de minimis wells or domestic wells are exempt from various other different regulatory programs. So there's a precedent for domestic wells to be considered under special circumstances.
The question I have there is that 100-foot minimum an absolute minimum, or is a 50-foot, or you mentioned something about an 80-foot?
So the guidelines as written basically say that septic system and leach field setbacks should be 200 feet.
Yeah.
And in parcels that are smaller than 2 acres, the guidelines can adopt 100 feet if there's no history of septic system failure. They also include that recognizing that one size can't fit all, as you're pointing out, that a variance can be obtained from that.
Okay, because like I'm saying, in order to put my well out front, I got to also tear out about 30 feet of concrete driveway, where if I can have a variance in the vacant land behind my house, maybe down to 70 feet or something like that, I can drill it back behind there and don't have to destroy my yard. I don't have to destroy, my driveway. And that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. Is that a possibility, or is that not within the realm of possibility?
No, it's within the realm, and that's what the variance process would be delegated for. In the past, what we would do as a profession is, in your specific situation, we would analyze the various contaminants or pollutant sources and allow you to shrink up that horizontal distance. Instead of the 100 feet, it could be 50 feet, but you would put in a deeper seal.
Yeah.
That's discretion.
And that's
judgment.
reasonable,
So,
yeah.
and that's what I'd love to be able to say right now. Hey, this is what we want to do, but we have to have these standards set forth, so we have a minimum to work from, and then in cases like yours, we would still work with you. It would just have to go through a slightly different process, but we would never, particularly with a developed piece of property, deem that unbuildable and put you in a situation where you couldn't get water.
And it would not require an expensive VIR report on my part, right?
It could require something. It depends on what you're truly trying to ask. I mean, if you're 25 feet away from a septic system.
No.
Mark, can we, sorry, I'm just going to say, you guys can talk about this.
Okay.
But we hear what you're saying, and I hope you hear what we're saying. We've got these cards we were dealt here from the court, but then we're.
Can I
go-
just clarify? Right now, our current setback from septic to well is 100 feet, right, in Stanislaus County? I hate to put you on the spot.
For under 2
It should be
acres.
2 with the local area management plan.
Okay, so that's what's currently in place. This is not changing per se. And then now you're talking about potentially sealing deeper if you need a variance of some sort. So I know I put in a septic some time ago. I know they went and measured, and I made it by just a couple feet. So it's difficult.
It sounds like there's potentials for variances if we make other adjustments with depth and things like that. So yeah, the intention is not to make properties worthless here. The intention is to try to get us through what we're dealing with here right now and with the courts, and then try to get our farmers to be able to get wells in that are badly needed right now also as we move forward here. So, okay. Forget it. Anybody else want to come up, discuss this talk? Come on up. Sorry to keep you here so long.
Well, I apologize. My name is Greg Austin, Chairman Withrow, members of the board, city or county council, and executive officer. Thank you for entertaining this conversation today. I've been in contact with Terry and Rob in regards to my submitted ag well permit, which was submitted in September of 21. At that time, I was told that I was preliminarily approved at the environmental resources level, and my permit was coming before the board at the next meeting. During that time frame, supposedly CEQA filed a lawsuit against the county, and it froze all activity, all meaningful activity from my point of view. So, as you're well aware, we are in a short water supply situation. I'm applying for a new ag well that would be supplementary in nature to what the district can provide. And that's my only desire. Is I'm a small farmer, but on my scale, I have a fifth leaf almond orchard, and I'm all in. And so without water, I'm facing disaster, quite honestly. I thought I was in the queue to be able to get my well developed and up and running, or at least the well drilled in 2021. That didn't happen. Been working with Rob at Environmental Resources. I would like to commend him for his efforts. I would say it far supersedes the majority of his staff. Their easy answer to me throughout this entire process has been no, or we don't know. So thank you for your efforts, and I apologize for not hearing your presentation. I had to be gone for a time. But I would just like to say there needs to be, and I heard the gentleman refer to a common sense approach. That's what I've been asking for all along. If the area that I live in specifically has been flagged apparently as a high nitrate contamination area, if that in fact is the case, a common sense approach from a farmer's perspective is that you would be able to withdraw that water from the aquifer, utilize it on your crops so that your plants can absorb the nitrate issue, and therefore potentially improving the water quality within that region. So the second thing I'd like to bring up is the costs associated with this have exactly doubled since September of 21 until today. And I have quotes, or I have, job quotes that verify that. I don't have those copies with me. But it's prohibitive on my scale at that point. So A common sense approach is very much welcomed from this one individual. And I implore you, as the supervisors, to press environmental resources to get these permits off their desk and enable the farming community to pursue their dream and their livelihood. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Anybody else want to come up?
Hello all.
How are you, Sean?
Sean from Hennings Brothers Well Drilling. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Third generation, 75 years in business, family business. We have worked with Mike and Rob on this process as local well drillers to try to help come up with a solution. I had a lot of intent to come here today and argue a lot of different points about this process, but in fact it's been positive. Rob and Mike have done as good a job as they can under the circumstances. This situation was avoidable, as we all believe it is, or would have been, or should have been a long time ago. But we are where we are now, and we've got a lot of things to pay attention to. As Mike mentioned, some future examination of our county analysis, water analysis, particularly because we're using data from the state of California, from the aquifer risk map, that from flow gradients and other things that Mike has mentioned in the details of this presentation are not necessarily valid throughout our county as the state has represented it. If you go to that aquifer risk map by the state of California, you'll see everything's blocked out in squares. And that's not how flow gradients work. That's not the hydrology and geology of our county from one end to the other. And we've got 27,000 square miles of county that change drastically from east to west and north to south. And the state's representation of that is horrible. And that's not going to be beneficial to us in the future. So we need to do our own analysis. And I know that's costly, and I know that takes an extensive effort on our part, but that is the next level I believe that we're going to have to take to protect us. And the supervisors, the board, the county, at our local level, that is your job to protect us against, I believe, the greater overreach of our state legislature. As we know, they're making greater and greater strides to take our water away from us. And we are a farming community. And the most important thing we can do is continue our rural lifestyle, our way of living that we all appreciate and know and love. And the way we're going to do that is by taking these steps, but also taking our control over what we look at as far as the groundwater contamination, how we can mitigate those problems to the best of our ability, and not let somebody else have control over that situation. And I know it's hard. I know it's going to be a struggle. And again, like I said, financially, but I think it's the most important thing we can do for our rural communities to keep our way of life the way we love it here in the Central Valley. We live in the most wonderful place in the world. Most people that live here and have lived here all their lives feel this way. We're all attached to farming in some capacity. Everybody on this board, everybody in this room, whether it's family, friends, whatever it is. So that's what we have to work hardest to do, is to protect our way of life in these circumstances. Everything in life is a risk to reward ratio. And do have to take a little risk here to get that reward. That reward benefit is making sure that we continue to have what we have and save the resource that we need and protect our families' businesses, whether it's farming, whether it's well drilling, whether it's everything that we do that's attached to farming in this area. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Sean. Okay, anybody else? Okay, seeing none. All right, the canopies are not coming. Okay. Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. Any comments, concerns?
Okay, so once again, we were briefed and we've been through this. I know there's been a lot of pressure on the Environmental Resources Department and to try and find some fix, but in government, you know, there's methodical plodding along. I know, Mike, you've been a great addition to this whole conversation. And so, you know, today I'm going to be supportive of it. I understand the frustration. I've had so many phone calls, not just from well drillers, but from people who have been applying, and with a 27-inch allotment this year, I think 30 inches in MID. If you're in Merced Irrigation District, even less. Not many people are going to get by without supplemental water, and we're just getting further and further behind in well drilling. And most of the people, you know, it's a much easier conversation if you're inside an irrigation district. You're utilizing all of your surface water rights, and you supplement with wells, because that's really what SGMA's going to be all about. And I think every time I see what the governor's plan is, or through the state of California, about SGMA having more authority over this, because it's about managing groundwater. And it's not anything I don't disagree with, as long as they don't take away our surface water rights and then put us in a situation where we have to utilize 100% of the groundwater. So again, you know, to the folks that haven't been able to get their wells, I apologize. I know that we've been trying, and to staff, you guys have been fantastic in this whole process. Common sense has ruled the day. This does provide for a safer, better water quality. I think the issues, and especially using the flow chart about capping the top, I think the cross-contamination, we have that issue addressed, I guess is the right word. And I look forward to moving forward and allowing some of these people, because 27 inches of water, people will run out a little after mid-season. So you're talking about just 4 or 5 months away if they don't have excess water. So thank you again.
Thanks, Vito. Any other comments from? I just want to thank you guys, thank Rob, and thanks Mike for all the work you've done on this. You know, as we said, we were dealt these cards with this ruling from the Supreme Court, and we all talked about this back when that first happened. We said, here's what's happened, what are we going to do? And we came up with our own timelines, and as Vito kind of referenced there, when are we going to run out of water? When are the farmers going to need to turn these wells on? And I think we're hitting it pretty close as to what we thought was going to be. We thought by May, I think maybe that we were going to be in trouble here, and you know, if it didn't rain, and that's exactly where this has worked out. So then from there, it was, okay, what do we do? How do we fix this in our community? And I mean, like, we had this ruling, and so it was just very commendable. Like I said, everybody thinks this moves slow, but this is really warp speed in government time for us to be able to come up with this method to our madness, to be able to empty out this list of wells that are out there waiting that we've been holding. And I know you guys have hung your hat on some good, you know, good science, good data that we think is defendable, right? Because that's what we wanted to be able to get these wells going, get them built, get the water pumping. But we needed to make sure we had something we could defend as a result of this ruling, and I think you guys have come up with that. And there are ways to, like I said, variances, ways we can work around this. Mark will find ways to make those certain situations work. But just, I really appreciate, and I appreciate you working with the well drillers and everybody and the farmers, and to come to this kind of consensus as to a method that will work and that is defendable, something we can hang our hat on, and to get this list of backed up permits off, you know, moving forward and get these wells going. So thank you guys a ton. And I know you, plenty of phone calls, I know from all of, besides the phone calls that we got, then we would call you guys, and we had multiple meetings just to get to this point. I know we were meeting like monthly there for a while, just trying to figure out how we can move this process along. And we were, like I said, we were all briefed on this. Everybody had a chance to look and see what you came up with here, and we're proud of you to get us to this point. Again, unfortunately, we're in California, and we're stuck with these things that we're dealing with. They're under attack from all sides, it seems like, at some point. And just appreciate the creativity and what you guys have come up with there. So Rob and Mike, thank you very much. And all your staff, Rob, I know they've had to handle a lot over the last few months here. So I think we've got it to a point that's going to work for us here. Okay. With that being said, if there's no other comments, we'll look for a motion here.
Motion to approve all staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you guys very much, and thank you all for waiting here so long for this to be the last item here today. Okay, hopefully it was a little rest for everybody. Now they got to go back to work. Okay, we're going to move on to correspondence.
This board has received the correspondence and claims as noted on the agenda.
Acknowledge receipt of correspondence and refer as recommended on the agenda. Board of Supervisor reports. Any supervisor reports? Buck?
Oakdale Rodeo this weekend.
Okay.
Saturday, Sunday.
There we go. Oakdale Road. Anybody else? Anything? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our legislative, fiscal, and management report. Chief Executive Officer Jody Hayes.
Thank you very much. One item to report out. We are required to verbally report the appointment of department head positions, salary, and benefits. So I would like to report and acknowledge and recognize Ms. Christine Huber as our new Director of the Community Services Agency. She will assume that role, I believe, on about April 16th or so. Ms. Huber comes to us with many years of experience. Would love to share all that, but I'll just meet the criteria and let you know that her compensation will be $82.16 per hour. She'll receive department head benefits consistent with those provided by the Board of Supervisors. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thanks, Jody. We are going to adjourn to closed session, but before we do, Tom is going to talk about it.
Yes, as I do every Tuesday. So we have two items of closed session. We have, the first is conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The agency negotiators are noted there in the agenda. The labor organization is United Domestic Workers Association. The second item is conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, Subdivision D2. We have two cases there. The first is Michael R. O'Neill and et al. Versus the Stanislaus County Employees Retirement Association. And that's Stanislaus County Superior Court case number 683548. The second is the House Modesto versus County of Stanislaus, and that's Stanislaus County Superior Court case number 2027505.
Okay, very good. Appropriate to ask for any public comment on those closed session items. All right, I want to thank Deputy Jim Walsh. Thanks, Jim, for being here today. And thank you all for being here. This meeting is adjourned.